Good evening, everyone. We'd like to call our regular scheduled school board meeting to order for October 14th, 2019. We have 6 members present. We have a quorum. I received a phone call from Mr. Twigg this afternoon. He is under the weather. He wishes that he could be with us this evening and looks forward to being with us at our next scheduled school board meeting in November. And I wish them well. We have in front of us our agenda. At this time, the chair will now entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion.
Moved by Mrs. Phelps. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Shelley. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved 6-0, one absent. Now we'll move on to 3.01, personnel matters as permitted by Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia. Let it be resolved that the board conduct a closed meeting for the following purposes: consideration of candidates for employment, assignment, promotion, demotion, and discipline of employees, or resignation of employees who have a contractual commitment to the board as permitted by 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia. Chair now entertain a motion.
I will so move.
Moved by Mr. Blaine. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Phelps. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we are now in closed session. The vote is 6-0, one absent.
The motion to return.
Okay. We have a motion to re-enter open session by Ms. Shelley. Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Gramp. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we are now in open session. Certification of closed meeting. Whereas the Spotsylvania County School Board has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this school board that such a closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law, now, therefore, be it resolved that the Spotsylvania County School Board hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting. We'll now entertain a motion to certify.
Motion.
Moved by Ms. Phelps. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Meyer. We'll do a roll call vote, starting with Ms. Gramp.
Gramp, aye.
Go ahead. Mr. Blaine votes aye. Ms. Phelps?
Phelps, aye.
Meyer, aye.
Shelley, aye.
And Braswell, aye. The motion carries 6-0, one absent. Items from closed meeting. Dr. Martin.
The motion is that the school board accepts the recommendation of the superintendent for personnel appointments, assignments, resignations, retirements, and the request for extended leave of absence for the 2020-2021 school years presented and discussed in closed meeting and permitted by Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Do we have a motion?
I think, Dr. Martin, I think you said 2021 school year, so I just want to make sure it's 19-20 school year. I might have misheard.
Yeah.
Okay,
think
thank
I
you.
So the motion is for the 2019-2020 school year?
Correct.
Okay. So do we have a motion?
Second.
Moved by Dr. Myers, seconded by Ms. Phelps. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries 6-0 with one absent. The time is now 5:57. We are going to enter into recess until 6:30. To our regular scheduled school board meeting for the 14th of October. We're going to ask if you would, at this time, either turn your cell phone off or place it on silent as to not cause a disruption in the meeting. At this time, we're going to have Ms. Gramp lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If the assembly would please stand. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ms. Gramp. And we are going to move past 8.01. We have no public hearing this evening, and we'll move to the consent agenda. Dr. Martin.
Mr. Chairman, before I go over the consent agenda, I just wanted to submit one clarification regarding Ms. Shelley's concern with the date specified in the closed session motion. The 2020-2021 school year date is only for the one request for an extended leave of absence that begins in February 2020 and carries over into the 2021 school year.
Okay, thank you. Do we need to make an adjustment? You don't need to make an
No.
adjustment? That's, okay, thank you. All right, so noted for the record.
Okay.
And we'll
And-
move to the consent agenda.
Okay. There are 7 items on the consent agenda this evening. Item 1, minutes of the September 9th, 2019 regular meeting. Item 2, approval of donations, which are usual and customary. Item 3, approval of budget amendment number 14 revised, which reads, request that the amount of budget amendment number 14 be amended from the original amount approved on September 9th, 2019 of $569,152.25 to the amount appropriated by the Board of Supervisors on September 10th, 2019 of $572,000. Item 4, approval of fiscal year 2020 budget amendment number 3, categorical transfer from instruction to technology budget categories for technology purchases to support student instruction in the amount of $9,150.45. Item 5, approval of change order number 21 for Cortland High School renovation project in the amount of $23,024. Item 6, approval of request by the Bridge Church to enter a regular use rental agreement for facilities at Salem Elementary School for worship services each Sunday morning. And item 7, authorization of signature in the absence of the superintendent. Request that Dr. Carol Flinard be named to sign official documents in the absence of the superintendent. Staff asks that this consent agenda be approved as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. We have the consent agenda in front of us. Now the chair will entertain a motion to
I
approve
so
the
move,
consent
Mr.
agenda.
Chair.
Moved by Dr. Myers, our second.
I will second.
Seconded by Mr. Blaine. Any discussion? Ms. Phelps.
I have a couple discussion topics or questions for the 9.05, the approval of change order. Do we have a running log? I think Mr. Upperco said that the add-ons that were implemented to the Cortland High School renovation. Do you have that for all of us? And the total cost for the high school renovation? It was just questions that I had.
Mr. Upperco, if you could, please. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Ms. Phelps, we do have a total to date, including the proposed change order number 21, which is on the consent agenda, a total of $1,027,087.75 to date, and we currently have approximately $1.5 million left in our retainage.
And another question, how did the school division make up for the difference for the unrecovered funds for the Cortland project? Is that in there also?
Is the what?
Is the difference for the turf fields, the difference
No,
in
that's a separate-
unrecovered funds, or is that separate?
That's a separate project. That's not in this amount.
Okay, the 1.5 million set aside?
We still have 1.5 million in retainage. Now, we anticipate using some of that. I mean, we're not at the end of the project yet, but we do have 1.5 million left at this point.
Yeah, and we could use that for the unrecovered portion of the funds?
Well, we
that do?
anticipate some changes in the music area layout, which we haven't received the final cost for and things of that nature, but we should be in good shape.
Mr. Upperco, I think too that this is all the turf fields that are in the CIP are not tied to any particular project. They are standalone. So this particular bond referendum or bond project is not tied to the fields. So what is outstanding that we're still hoping to recover would be,
That's for the
eventually
core
addressed,
renovation
would be
of the home.
addressed through either other bond proceeds or operational funds.
Okay, thank you. So it's not from this fund. Okay, and that's all I have about the Cortland. I do have another comment
ma'am,
on the
please.
next one.
Go ahead.
9.07, the authorization of signature in absence of the superintendent. So are you recommending Ms. Flanard until Ms. Gaines returns back? Or is this in addition to Ms. Gaines? Because I know that we had authorized as a board Ms. Gaines as the other signature, so I just wanted to clarify.
Right, this will be for a designated period of time, and then it has to come back before the board as a cyclical process. So we will, I will bring back who is designated at that time. But right now, until that comes back before the board, it is Ms. Flanard and only Ms. Flanard.
So Ms.
Dr.
Gaines-
Flanard, excuse me.
Right, Dr. Flanard. So Ms. Gaines is no longer.
Is not going
a
to be
signature.
designated with that
Okay.
for the time being.
Thank you for the clarification. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries 6-0 with one absent. We see that we have informational items there for your consideration of 10.01, Commonwealth Governor's School, board agenda, Head Start, discipline report for August, and also items for the November 11th, 2019 board meeting. Our instructional highlights will have Chancellor High School We Cycled wardrobe event, CTE Engineering and Construction. Ms. Flanard.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Braswell. I'm not sure. Thank you, Mr. Braswell, members of the board, Dr. Baker and Dr. Martin. Mr. Ed Levis will be presenting with his students from Engineering, Drawing, and Design course, as well as Construction Technology course, assisted in the development, modification, and improvement of clothes racks for the community We Cycled wardrobe event held at Fredericksburg Fieldhouse. Mr. Levis?
Good evening. Thanks for having us today. We have students here from Chancellor High School, and we have Miss Vicki Burrows from We Cycle Wardrobe Consignment, correct? Yes. We were brought this project last year from Miss Burrows. They have a very large children's consignment clothing, I guess, events. They're large events. And they had some real issues with some of their stands. Just mechanical things. It's like we happen in the world all day, all month, all year long. And they had to have it addressed. So Ms. Burrows came to us and asked us if we would be interested in helping them, make a bunch of new stands and some improvements on them. So we have Jean-Claude Sabimana and Brooklyn Bogart from the brains and the brawn of the construction process. And Jean-Claude was in the engineering program and Brooklyn was in the construction program. And they all worked together to address these issues as Ms. Burrows brought them to us. So I'd like to introduce Ms. Burrows for just a moment, and she can tell you a little bit about what was going on.
We've been using some of these racks since we started the sale, and it was 18 years ago, and they were getting rickety. And we had things that we wanted to improve on, and I asked Mr. Levis if he would take this on, and I gave him a prototype that was a little bit advanced before our first ones, but then he came along and he made more changes to it. Made my life so much easier. We can now put together the racks in a few hours, as not all day, and they're really sturdy. And he's got some more things he's going to do for us to make them even just a little bit better. I can't even think they can be better, but they can. So he's been really good, and I've enjoyed meeting the guys and the girls, and it was a really good thing we had partnering together.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the school board for having us tonight. I'd also like to say thank you to WeSoccer for the opportunity. Last year, I was in the engineering studies program when we undertook this project. WeSoccer came to us in the beginning with 2 racks that they had been using. The first one had some wear and tear from the heavy use, is what Brooklyn's holding on right now. That was the first one. The second iteration was an improved model, the one that Mr. Levis is holding right now, that addressed some of the issues from the first model. We as a class, we observed and analyzed both models to see if we can further improve the design. The first model has some wear and tear from the heavy use. The first model had an inefficient build. It had too much exposed hardware. We didn't like it. The products, it had so much. If you can see, I don't know if you all can see in the back, but it has so much, too much metallic hardware exposed. But the second one had even more exposed hardware, and we didn't like that. The pieces weren't meant for the application for the first one. So we as a class decided to remove all of the metallic hardware that was exposed and replace them with a joint called the mortise and tenon joint. The mortise and tenon joint is simply just a hole, which is the mortise, and the tenon, which is a piece that goes into the mortise. But making mortise and tenon joints, it was much more complex and time-stressed. But as a class, we decided to practice making mortise and tenon joints before we started making our products. So we developed jigs. Jigs is a tool that served as a guide. It helped with accuracy and stability. The jigs helped us when using the machine called a drill press. A drill press is a machine that comes down and drills whatever you want to drill. The jigs helped us control whatever our lumber, our 2x4, while the drill press comes down and drills holes into the 2x4, creating the mortises. When creating the tenons, we got the 2x4s, went to a machine called a table saw, and the table saw cuts the 2x4, shaping it into a tenon, which then you can connect both pieces together. Mr. Levis taught us how to hand chisel lumber and wood, because we needed to hand chisel some of the excess wood that was in the mortise, so because it was so the mortise then can fit in. So we had assembly lines. That's what Brooklyn is going to talk about. Thank you for having us here. My time is done.
Okay, so after we got the blueprints from the engineering students, we decided to create an assembly line to make the process speed up and go faster. So as we had the assembly line, we had one half of our class split up into creating the base part, and then one class creating the top rack part. To create the base, we used one of the jigs that we created, and that was it for the bottom, for the base part. And then for the top rack, we went to the table saw and created the tenons for all like the middle rails. And then for the mortises, we went to the drill press. So the tenants could fit it, like, so they could go together, and so they would hold together. And then after we did all that for the base and top, we would dry fit everything, so everything would fit, and to make sure that we knew that like things would fit, and then we had enough of everything. And then after that, we just glued everything together and then clamped it. So yeah.
Ms. Burrows, would you like to tell how it actually went out in the field? And then
Yes, yes. So they gave me my 30, and I want 30 more, can I?
we got it. We got you.
Yes, we took them and we put them to work, and each one of these holds 800 pieces of clothing, and in summer it's like more like 1,000 because the clothing are skinnier. And they held up. We had about 80,000 items in the sale when we were there, and we had no problems with the racks, and it was the first time we haven't had a major tip over or anything like that, so it's really good. And we were so happy to work with these guys. We also work with the REACH program. We have that they come and set up these racks for us, and they're such hard workers, and they help us, and we also donate the clothing after to the for the school dressing days and other. So we do a lot of things with and for the community, and they do so much for us too. And we can't be happier with this arrangement. And I can't talk.
So I want to thank you again for having us in this evening to show off their hard work. They're starting to now catch on from some of our conversations that their job isn't finished yet. Ms. Burrows has brought them all back. Some of my students who worked on them, even over the summer, we had about 9 days this summer, students were in the shop and they were working and producing because we wanted to get them ready for their fall sale. And they came in last week and they said, "Why are those racks back?" I said, "Well," and so what we've done now is we've asked WeCycle to give us feedback on how they worked, how they held up. And the nature of 2x4s is they do bend and twist a lot. So we're now going and taking the mortise and tenon a step further. We're drilling holes, we're putting some glue and some dowels. So we're now cross-pegging them so they can't pull out. And we're going to be modifying all those, and that will be a change to their plan. And the engineering kids will get to take it over again this year and take it a step further. So that's what they're doing at Chancellor, and they've worked very, very hard. Thank you again.
I want to take an opportunity to thank you for sharing with us. I first of all would like to tell the two students you did a wonderful job in your presentation, and let me let you in on a secret. Every time I have an opportunity to speak in public, I get nervous. So it's normal, don't worry about it. Yeah, you did a wonderful job, and we're really proud of you and all that you've done, and I really appreciate the fact that you have found a way to integrate REACH into the process. Those kids have so much to offer and share, and it's great when we integrate them in the things that we're doing with all of our activities and operations. So I thank you for that, and Ms. Burrow, I'll see you on Friday. Any other comments? Any other comments? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much. We'll move on now to 12.01, Visual Arts Recognition. Ms. Flennard.
Thank you. Tonight we are celebrating the outstanding student artwork from 4 of our schools. And this month we're showing artwork from Smith Station Elementary, art teacher Chelsea Rogers, Salem Elementary, art teacher Jeannie Carr, Post Oak Middle School, art teacher Casey Branham, and Massaponax High School art teacher Rachel Bailey. And these students and schools were recognized this evening prior to the start of this meeting.
Thank you, and we'll move on now to 12.02. Superintendent's Art Award, Ms. Flennard.
Thank you. The October Superintendent's Award winner for Outstanding Visual Arts goes to Mara Fisher. Miss Fisher is a first grade student at Riverview Elementary School. Her artwork will hang in Dr. Baker's office this month. There you go.
All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. One more, just make sure.
Congratulations to both of you.
Dr. Fenard, can you continue with 12.03, the 2019 Virginia Naturally School Award?
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. If we could please have come forward Kelly Claiborne, Robin Donovan, and Nicole Magnum as I share with the audience. We are pleased to share that Spotswood Elementary is a recipient of this year's Department of Game and Inland Fisheries DGIF Virginia Naturally School Award. The 66 schools being recognized this year represent the efforts of 42,394 students, 3,403 teachers, and 378 years of combined environmental education effort. The environmental efforts are support of the Profile of Virginia Graduate through the development of the students' communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creative thinking, and civic responsibility. Congratulations to Spotswood Elementary students and staff on a job well done. Keep up the great work.
Dr. Fenard, continue with 12.04, the 2019 High School Diplomats.
Thank you. If we could please have Alex Sherwood and Caroline Storin come forward. These students are seniors at Cortland High School, and they were 2 of 40 students selected from across the United States to participate in the High School Diplomats program this past summer. The program brings together high school students from the United States and Japan each summer through 2 parallel experiences. American students traveled to Princeton University, where they participated in 10 days of cultural exchange alongside a Japanese roommate. Alec and Caroline are now eligible to travel to Japan next summer. Of the 40 U.S. students, only 20 will be chosen. We'll cross our fingers for you both. Congratulations to you both for being selected for this honor.
And now, Dr. Fenard, 12.05, NASPAA High School 2018-19, Bob Shepard's PA Announcer of the Year Award.
Thank you. We are pleased to share that the National Association of Sports Public Address Announcers has selected Matt Kreitz as the High School 2018-19 Bob Shepard PA Announcer of the Year. Mr. Kreitz has been Massaponax football announcer for the past 17 years, during which time he has announced 12 regional football playoffs, 4 football conference championships, 1 Virginia High School League semifinal football championship. He has also announced baseball, boys and girls basketball, wrestling, Virginia State Marching Band assessments, as well as various other events at the school. Additionally, Mr. Kreitz is the 2003 graduate of Massaponax High School. Congratulations on this distinguished honor. If you could please come forward to accept your recognition. he potentially is announcing a game at this moment.
We will move on then to 12.06, the 2019 Virginia Association of Teachers of Family and Consumer Sciences Year Award.
If we could please have Terry Evers come forward as I read. We are pleased to share that in July, SCTC teacher Terry Evers was named 2019 Teacher of the Year for Virginia by the Virginia Association for Teachers of Family and Consumer Sciences. This award recognizes teachers who are providing outstanding educational programs for youth and/or adults in family consumer sciences and communities. Candidates must have made significant contributions towards innovative, unique, and novel programs designed to improve and promote career and technical education, particularly in family and consumer sciences. Congratulations on this distinguished honor.
Dr. Fenard, moving on to 12.07, the 2019 VSBA Honor Roll.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. If we could please have Adele Uphouse with the Freelance Star come forward. Reporters and local media outlets play an important role in public education, and we're honored to recognize Adele with the Freelance Star as a recipient of the 2019 Virginia School Boards Association Media Honor Roll for her responsible reporting so that our community members receive timely information about division initiatives and programs. Congratulations, Ms. Uphouse. Please come forward. Oh, you are here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flenard and Dr. Meyer. And I want to thank all those that received awards and those that came to support those that received awards. None of us are able to do what we do by ourselves. We have to always thank those that provide support for us either directly or indirectly. After all we see when we see someone that receives an award is the great groundswell support of those that are behind them, and that's so important to recognize those that support our young people so they can do the work that we celebrate. Thank you. We'll move on now to public comments. Dr. Martin, if you would please, sir.
The public comment segment of our board meetings is a time to receive recommendations, suggestions, concerns, and comments from the general public. Each speaker is allotted 5 minutes, and we ask that they clearly state their name, address, and/or voting district for the board. A speaker may request additional time from the board should one's 5-minute allotment expire. We ask that you keep your comments focused on the issues and that all speakers maintain a level of decorum and mutual respect for one another. Our first speaker is Ellen Gallagher.
Good evening, distinguished board members. My name is Ellen Gallagher, and I am a 6th grader at Chancellor Middle School. I think that field hockey should be brought to Spotsylvania. I've been playing field hockey since I was 5 and still am today. If we had field hockey as a sport in Spotsy, then a lot of girls would want to come out and try it. Field hockey would be a great way to get more girls participating in sports and school activities. I know many people that go to Stafford and Fredericksburg City schools, and when they ask if my team has won any games, I have to remind them that Spotsy doesn't support the middle school field hockey program, and I really wish that they did. Field hockey is a great conversation starter and would be lots of fun to have here in Spotsy. I play with a travel team called Typhoon to keep my stick on a ball and get extra practice. I love Typhoon, but would also love to have an opportunity to play for middle school. There are so many great reasons why middle school field hockey should be welcomed to Spotsylvania schools, and I hope you all can agree that it should be in our county. Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Adeline Watkins, and I am a 5th grader at Battlefield Elementary School. First, I wanted to thank Mr. Braswell, Miss Shelley, and Miss Phelps for responding to my letter. I think field hockey should be in Spotsylvania County middle schools. Middle school can be a hard time for kids. If Spotsylvania County Middle Schools had a field hockey, it would be easier for kids to make friends and find something that they love to do. Field hockey is also in Stafford Middle Schools. Since lots of kids play field hockey for Stafford schools, I think that shows that field hockey is popular enough for kids to want to play in Spotsylvania Middle Schools. I really enjoy going to school. Thank you for all you do for the kids in Spotsylvania. I hope you will consider adding field hockey to middle school sports.
Margaret Gallagher.
Good evening. I'm Margaret Gallagher. My daughter Ellen, excuse me, just spoke. I just wanted to echo the importance to girls in this area to add middle school field hockey. It's very difficult in Spotsylvania County when all they have for hockey is Fredericksburg Parks and Rec, and that stops at the junior level. So these girls don't have an opportunity to play anywhere unless they play travel, which we are very thankful we're allowed to provide for our daughter. But you look at this, I'm an educator in Stafford County, I've been there for 24 years, and I look at the hockey programs that these schools are able to have, and it's because they have a direct feeder program from the middle schools. It starts there. And you know, when you have success, success begets success. And I'm at Mountain View, and our field hockey program is phenomenal there. And you look at the feeder schools, and that's where it begins. And I feel that these girls should have an opportunity to play in the middle school and not be left out to dry. When they age out of junior in the city for Parks and Rec, there's nothing left. And at the very least, if you don't see fit to bring middle school hockey, at least allow 8th graders to please play JV. That gives them at least a year more with their stick on the ball, because you look at your bigger schools like Riverbend and Massaponax. Now, my daughter will go to Chancellor High School, my son is there, but these bigger schools are competing against Stafford schools who have a middle school program that are feeding into it. That, I mean, Riverbend and Massaponax are already behind the curve. They've got kids that are playing 3 more years where their girls are starting in 9th grade as JV, just getting a stick on the ball, and it makes a huge, huge difference. So I just wanted to come and make my little plug to please bring middle school hockey. And I wanted to add one small thing that has nothing to do with hockey, but I have been wanting to do this for years, and since I'm here, I would like you to know as a board how phenomenal Battlefield Elementary is. My kids went through 11 years. I knew I was going to do that. My kids are through 11 years at that school, and they were fantastic. From the top down, the education they got and the foundation they had was fabulous. They felt important. They felt loved. They felt that they had a voice. And every single thing about that school is fantastic, and I think as a board you should know that. So thank you very much.
Vivica Berry.
Thank you. I attended last month's meeting, and I heard much about the strategic plan and executive summary. So I went ahead and printed it off so I could see what everyone was talking about, and I brought that here with me tonight. And I wanted to comment on a couple items. One of the sections in here says the top 10 most critical external issues. And I feel like there are issues that are missing. One is accountability. Another is community involvement, and another is mental health. As regards accountability, I talk to a lot of people because I have lots of friends, and I have friends who have kids that are in the schools, primarily in Massaponax High. And so I ask questions. One young person, I said, so is there anything going on with drugs in the school? And I was told, oh yeah, they're smoking pot in the bathrooms. So I called another friend. I said, do you know anything about this? Your child goes there. And I was told, well, that child never uses the bathroom while at school. So I found that very upsetting to know that there is pot being smoked in our bathrooms, and to also know that kids don't feel safe going in the bathrooms. Several years ago, I got involved with a sort of anti-bullying crusade, because I had too many friends with kids with horror stories. And so, of those friends, I want you to know that 5 pulled their kids out and they're homeschooling them. One gentleman told me that his son was constantly getting into fights protecting his friends, and that he told his son, you know, one day they're going to get you in the bathroom. And that he watched his son's confidence go down, and he pulled him out before that happened. The bathrooms need to be a safe place, obviously. Obviously, smoking pot is against the law. So what are we telling our kids if we are not enforcing discipline? What is the message that we're giving? Another young person that I spoke with said that he does not feel safe in the school. They're on edge. Again, I'm talking about Massaponax High. But I suspect where something's going on in one place is going on other places, because that's just how it is. So I would like to bring this to the attention, and instead of what I feel like I usually hear, which is, well, it's the parents, it's the teachers, it's always somebody else. Or what time, where, who was it? I'd like to recommend that monitors be placed in the bathroom so that kids are safe to go in there and relieve themselves. And that it's clear that this behavior is not acceptable. I had a niece who never used the bathroom in high school, and I wish I had understood more about things then when she was going through this. And the thought of a young person going to school, not relieving themselves for how many hours? How do you do that? You don't drink water. That's one way. You dehydrate. And it shouldn't be that way. When I went to high school, junior high, middle school, I went to the bathroom. Another young person told me that not only are they smoking pot, but they're trying to get involvement from the students coming in to smoke pot and threatening them if they don't. But he told me they've never done it. I don't find any comfort in knowing that that young person has not yet been beaten up. When I was involved with the anti-bullying, many of the videos that I saw of children being beaten were in the bathrooms. So I suggest we have monitors, that we have somebody who sits in the bathrooms. Vaping is also apparently used to cover up marijuana, but even if it's just nicotine, we're talking about young people with young minds, and getting addicted onto substances when you're young, with your hormones raging, sets you up for a lifetime of drug and discipline issues. Because if you could do that, then what else can you do? Maybe you can break some windows. Maybe you can break into cars. Very simple things can get good kids into a bad situation that lasts a lifetime. And right now I'm trying to help adults break out of that. And most of them, what they have in common, they got started on drugs and smoking young. The next thing I wanted to talk about is a favorite quote from somebody I really admire, Dr. Ben Carson. He said, "We cannot be free if we are not brave." And I would add to that, and honest. There are problems that we can all work together to solve. And I'd like to see, when I put down community involvement in the 10 most critical external issues.
Ms. Berry?
Yes?
Forgive me for interrupting. I just want to let you know your time expired. Would you like to request additional time from the board?
I would, thank you.
I will make a motion to give Ms. Berry extra time.
All right, we have a motion to give Ms. Berry extra time by Ms. Shelley. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Phelps. We have a roll call vote, starting with Ms. Shelley.
Shelley, aye.
Meyer, aye.
Phelps, aye.
Braswell, aye. Please continue.
Thank you. By honest, it's all of us talking together. I feel like these plans are made, and we, the parents, the aunts, the uncles, the grandparents, we aren't included. We need to talk about these things. And I'd like to see forums where we do talk, we do get together and address this. So discipline is big. The bullying is still alive and well. And I want to bring to the attention, speaking of field hockey, that there is a supervisor who spoke up and wrote an op-ed that was not complimentary about what's going on with our finances. Many of us have been requesting a forensic audit, have been requesting that the school board budget, et cetera, be treated just like any other business. we're all subject to audits. I've been audited twice by the IRS. And so this person wrote an op-ed, and the following day, his daughter was cut from field hockey. She's a star player on a field hockey team that needs her. And I think that is bullying from the top down, because it also sends out a message to other parents and other teachers to just sit down and shut up. And we need more people who are going to stand up and work together for solutions. And I would like to recommend that that girl, that young woman, be reinstated, that there be an apology, and that we start getting together to talk about these things. Because the lives of our kids are at stake, and we all say that they're so important to us, and so are our teachers. I've spoken to a lot of teachers who are not very happy, again, back to the discipline issue. They're having to deal with one or two unruly people in a classroom that just messes it up for everybody else. We need to sit down and talk about this, because we need to have happy teachers, and we need to have students that feel safe, valued, and protected. Thank you for your time.
Rebecca Williams.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Williams, and I represent technically the Chancellor District, but I work at Riverbend, and I'm a PE teacher there as well as the field hockey coach, and I'm just here to continue the conversation about middle school field hockey and the impact that has or could have at the Spotsylvania County level. And not only would it impact technically the success of those programs, but I would like to also point out that I was a field hockey player at Chancellor High School, and it was a phenomenal program, and I went on to play collegiate field hockey, and now I'm back in the county. It meant so much to me, and it had such a positive impact and role in my life that I came back, and now I'm passionately coaching it here in the same county that I graduated from. And I think that that's just something to also note, along with all of the beautiful things that those very inspiring young athletes said, and a very passionate parent that also spoke to this. I would just like to also speak as a coach in this county, how beneficial it could be for our athletes and our young females going into a sport feeling confident and going and starting something that they'll feel confident and have a group that will be there for them and back them up. And that's how I felt going into high school, because I had this program. But when we have girls that don't know what it is and they don't have the same opportunities as maybe those programs in the Stafford County schools, it does set us back as a little bit of a deficit when I'm sitting in my PE classes trying to recruit kids based off of their floor hockey abilities. And now I have some phenomenal sophomores, but they're definitely behind. And how awesome could that be if they had already been in a program pushing them towards the right path and being in a successful program and having that great backbone and people to support them and being in a positive program, versus wondering right now if they should have done it, maybe they shouldn't have, because they never had the experience when they were young. So now they already feel behind and they're not trying out for the program. And I feel like that is a direct correlation as to why we're not necessarily seeing JV programs in this county, because the girls don't necessarily know what it is. That's all. Thank you.
Carolyn Storin and Alex Sherwood.
Good evening, and thank you so much for having us here tonight. Alec and I have had such a great experience this summer participating in the high school diplomats program. We are so excited to share a taste of it with you in the hopes of encouraging more participants from Spotsylvania County. Our presentation may go a little over 5 minutes, and we are wondering if that is okay with you.
When you get to that point, we'll ask for additional time in our normal procedure.
Okay, thank you so much.
So what is HSD? The High School Diplomats Program is a nationwide program in both America and Japan, which prompts an incredible amount of diversity in the 80 students selected, 40 of which come from America and 40 come from Japan. You are also given a unique experience with your roommate, who you will share the 10 days with in the freshman dormitories at Princeton.
A typical day at HSD starts off with Rajyo Taiso. We then attend Japanese language and Japanese cultural classes. We have program activities, and the day ends with some fun cultural events.
So Rajyo Taiso translates directly to radio exercises, which is an interesting niche in the Japanese culture. It begins every morning at 7:15. All of the students meet in the freshman dormitory area to participate in some stretches. Now, it may seem sort of insignificant in your day, but it's just an interesting part of getting to know more about the Japanese culture. And after that, we head to breakfast.
And then we have Japanese language and Japanese cultural classes. The Japanese students will go to English language and English cultural classes at this time. In language class, we learn the basics of the Japanese language, certain really important key phrases. We also learn their 3 alphabets and some bases for writing in Japanese. The next part is cultural classes. These are really, really fun times. We get to roll and make our own sushi, which we then get to eat, which is really fun. Then we can, the next day we learn how to make origami and some significance behind that. Another really fun day is when we learn traditional Japanese calligraphy.
So one of the more, I guess I would say, serious aspects of the program are the presentations. So prior to your stay at Princeton, you'll be assigned with 4 other American students, one of 4 topics, which include regional characteristics, social issues, education, and government, all concerning 2 fields in America. And one of the most interesting parts of this experience is that it all starts out with just an idea and a deadline. So what's necessary for this project to work is that we know our audience, which includes all of the Japanese students who vary in their understanding of the English language. So we really had to get creative with this project. We weren't allowed to use any technology, so it made researching the topic, which for me was regional characteristics, and presenting the topic an experience that I grew into, and I developed a lot of very great skills.
Discussions are another vital part of HSD. It really, helps us become actual diplomats. These vary. We watch some TED Talks and do, bigger group discussions. We also have one-on-one discussions with our roommates. This really helps us understand their personal experiences and how our cultures vary. And I found these discussions to be really impactful. I grew a lot and learned a lot from my roommate and from the American students as well, as we all have different views.
So another part of the diplomat process are the theme days, which are a little more laid back, but you still gain a very vital experience and learn a lot about yourself as well as your roommate. So these include the Spirit Day, which is J1 versus J2. They divide us into J1 and J2 in order to provide the space for each individual learning opportunity. So J1 goes against J2 in this first day. And then there's the HSD free day / night out, where we're given money and we're allowed to go visit Princeton's campus. There's the Japanese Cultural Festival, Halloween, Independence Day, and Olympics Day.
So Spirit Day is J1 versus J2. We get to explore the Princeton campus, do fun activities, and really bond with each other.
So the Japanese Cultural Festival, better known as Bunka no Hi.
Forgive me for interrupting, guys. I just want to let you know your time has expired.
Okay.
To extend time.
We have a motion by Ms. Phelps for an extension. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Meyer. We'll do a roll call vote, starting with Ms. Shelley.
Shelley, aye.
Meyer, aye.
Phelps, aye.
Blaine, aye.
Ms. Brown. And Braswell, aye. The motion carries 6-0. Please continue.
Thank you. So Bunka no Hi is an annual Japanese cultural festival held each year, stressing the importance of the academics, the arts, and preserving Japanese culture. An interesting part about this program was that this generation of Japanese students was given the responsibility of carrying this tradition and sharing it with us as Americans, having no prior knowledge of the significance to the culture. So what this included was some traditional calligraphy, as well as some powder tea making. Aside from that, we practiced kendo, which is probably comparable to fencing. And we also got to practice with some traditional Japanese drumming, which I found to be, as a music student, very different from our own style of drumming.
The next day was HSD Night Out, or a free day. We got to explore the town of Princeton and have lunch together, shop together. So we just got to be regular teenagers and have a really fun day. That night is your date night, even though there's no romance allowed. So we are paired with a Japanese boy or a Japanese girl. We have a fancy dinner, we have a dance, which is so fun because the Japanese students have nothing like that in Japan. They have no homecoming or prom. So this is really a chance for us to sort of share our American culture with them. It's also great when you're sort of paired with a Japanese boy. You get to see a different perspective. And I became really good friends with my date for the rest of the week. So it was a really fun experience.
So another day that bounces off that similar premise was the Independence Day. So basically, it was it looked like a basic American cookout, essentially. We grilled and we participated in some fun fair-like activities, but to the Japanese students, that was everything. It was an experience that they had no prior knowledge to, and they even got to learn some basics about American independence, which to us felt so infant. The next one is Halloween, which they have their own version of it, but it was fun to share with them our own experience with Halloween. Prior to your experience at Princeton, you were given the responsibility of getting all the materials necessary for the various days. So for Halloween, I had to brainstorm some creative ideas for myself and my roommate, and we ended up going as Spider-Man and Gwen Stacy, which he found pretty amusing. I went as Gwen Stacy, he got to be Spider-Man. And it was a night full of just fun, and it was very laid back, which was an important part to the experience.
One of my favorite days was the Olympic Day. We went to Princeton Stadium and got to compete in various activities. We did dodgeball, soccer, water balloon toss. This was a really fun day for me because my roommate and I are both very athletic. So this was a great way for us to bond, not through words, but just through playing sports together. So it was really fun.
So one of the last nights was the HSD talent show. This was a mandatory part of the experience, and to many of the participants, it was very impeding and stressful. But what I found from this was that I grew in many ways with my roommate because I had to teach him a lot of things that he didn't know before when we decided on what we were going to do. And as you can see, a lot of the acts varied from musical talents that roommates were able to collaborate on, as well as more creative and unconventional methods for approaching a talent show. And what was so significant about it is that it was one of our last nights together. So we really embraced the HSD experience as being a family and being there to support each other. So yeah.
As for eligibility for students in our county, they must be sophomores or juniors to apply to HSD US, and then the following year, as either juniors or seniors, they will apply to HSD Japan.
So the application is already opened. Most of it's online, but the second part to it is actually an interview. So it's available on highschooldiplomats.com. And it's a simple application. It's really just a get-to-know-you type of application. There are several essay questions concerning your identity and who you are as a person. And on January 8th of next year, the application is due.
As for the interview period, applicants who are selected for the interview will be contacted about mid-February. For local students in the Virginia area, they will travel to a certain high school or location where they will conduct the interview face-to-face, and then final decisions will be announced no later than April 15th of next year.
So to close this out, we included a page with some testimonials from participants in this year's program, from the American program. And from my experience,
forgive me for interrupting again. I'm very sorry, but your time has expired, and you want to request additional time from the board. You may at this time.
You left those testimonials with us, did you not?
Yes, they are.
Yeah, we'll take an opportunity to look at those, and we appreciate not only your enthusiasm, but your detailed presentation, and maybe we can look forward to hearing some additional reports in this regard at a later date. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, there's all of the speakers that signed up.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Is there anyone in the audience that did not have an opportunity to address the board? Please come forward. And we'll, I see there's some others, so we'll just, we'll extend it until everyone has a chance to speak.
Good evening, all. Catherine Palmer. I reside in the Lee Hill District. I just want to take this opportunity to congratulate the schools as well as the Chamber of Commerce on the recent Discover Your Future event. I had the pleasure of volunteering, and I very specifically chose the bus duty assignment because I knew there were going to be 6,000 children inside the expo center, so I wanted to be outside where it was quiet and relaxing. But it wasn't relaxing, and I wanted to come up here and just tip my hat to Renee Daniels and Amber Baleko for the extraordinary coordination efforts that I got to see the fruits of. Just unloading 6,000 students across 2 days and loading them back up and getting them through all the stations I said online, it was a Herculean effort. And I know I did about 8,000 steps that morning alone. And I think Ms. Baleko probably did at least 40,000 because she was everywhere. So I tip my hat to them. You should be very proud of your staff. I also wanted to say that the thing that I loved about that event was that it was the concept of pathways sort of brought to life. And I did pop into the building briefly for as long as my ears could tolerate it. And I was amazed because I walked in, and to the left there was a Spotsylvania school bus inside the building with its front hood up, and they were talking about the role of mechanics and the job of mechanics. And then to the right of where I was standing, there was a violin maker. And it just was such a wonderful visual of, you know what, whatever you're interested in, there are many ways you can take that. And I don't think any 8th grader came out of that day saying, I know what I want to be when I grow up, but that's okay because they may have seen their passion in an actual job. And so I was just very moved by that. So I want to thank you all for your work in putting that together. That's it. Thanks.
Will there be anyone else that would like to address the board? Please, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Dr. Baker and the entire Spotsylvania School Board. My name is Frida Jackson. I'm at 4529 Leanne Lane. I have a child that attends Thornburg Middle School. On October the 3rd, there was an incident involving my child and another child. I was notified by the school that Friday morning, which was the 4th, in regards to this incident. The reason I'm here today is systemic from that incident about transparency within this school board. I am highly upset and deeply offended that this school board doesn't think enough of the parents to inform them of ongoing disciplinary issues. What I'm saying here is, yes, I was contacted by Dr. Rue about the disciplinary actions of this incident, but my child did not instigate. Let me be clear on that. But she was given 2 days of ISS. However, it was perceived by the children of my community, Lee Hill, that the perpetrator only got 30 minutes of lunch detention. Now, when I say transparency, I know rules and regulations are put in place for a reason. However, I think that you don't go far enough in addressing the black and white and the gray areas. What are you saying, Frida? What I'm saying is, from that incident that did not disclose what the punishment was for both students to myself, not that I needed to know. But the incident escalated. Instead of the child, my daughter perceived he spat on her, but I was told it was just water. Don't minimize the effect of what happened. He did throw water on her twice. She retaliated and she hit him. He kicked her back, she slapped him. It went on. Where was the accountability from the teachers? I'm gonna go a bit farther. She was put in ISS on that Monday. That particular child, the same child, brought a knife to school that Monday. Was I notified? No. Where is the accountability for Spotsylvania schools? Where is the transparency that y'all hope to get from the parents, from the community, when you yourselves don't give us that? My child's safety is at stake. Yes, it's up to the board to go from the 10 days of out-of-school suspension from what I've been told, because I requested a meeting with Mr. Lynn, the principal, and the counselor. I showed up and my fiance today for that said meeting. No one was present but Dr. Rue, and I commend her for trying to answer and address my concerns. However, had my daughter not been in ISS, I shudder to think at what this child could have done to her. He brought a knife to school, and I'm not going to minimize it with you or anybody else. I don't want him back on that school campus, and I think you all should take a better view of your policies. That is all I have to say. Thank you for your time, and Godspeed.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address the board? Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address the board? Seeing none, we'll close public comments. We'll move to board member comments. We're going to start with Mr. Blaine, where we'll go then to Ms. Shelley, then Ms. Phelps, Ms. Gramp, and then Dr. Meyer and myself, in that order. Mr. Blaine, if you would, please.
No comments this evening.
No comments. Ms. Shelley?
Thank you, Mr. Braswell. First, I was like, ma'am that just spoke, please get in touch with Dr. Baker and we can find out more information about that. But I want to go on and say congratulations to the community effort that we have with our schools and the We Cycle Wardrobe Committee. That is amazing. That we've come together, that just proves that our community works together, is always cares about each other, and I want to thank We Cycle for coming to Chancellor and Chancellor for answering the call, because that's huge. So thank you so much for that. The Discover Your Future event, that was mentioned, and again, I was there, wonderful event. I could handle the noise, but I'm used to it, and it just seems like the students that I did speak to seemed like they were having a good time and learning a lot. So that's always a plus. Our accommodation to Ms. Uphouse from the Freelance Star. I just hope everybody got to see the article that was in the paper about the Future Teachers Academy that she just published, and it was an amazing article, and it really highlights our Future Teachers Academy at Chancellor High School. So if you haven't seen it, go on to fredericksburg.com and take a look. You can for that article. Field hockey parents, chill girls. I'm a field hockey mom. My daughter played field hockey from 2nd grade all the way through Riverbend, 4-year varsity starter, and then she played club hockey at the University of Florida her first 2 years there. So I understand. Before I got on the board, I asked the board about bringing in field hockey, and about letting 8th graders move up to JV. And then I did when I first got on the board, and I've mentioned it a couple times since then. I'm happy to say that we have some presentations tonight to maybe bring things into the future, soon future, I'm hoping, but we'll see what the presentation says. So thank you all for coming in and speaking today.
Politics.
Ms. Berry, I wanted to say thank you to her for mentioning mental health when she spoke. That was something that we had in our budget, was more social workers. That's something that I have been asking for a number of years, is more social workers for our students and to reduce class sizes. Because as she even mentioned, more eyes on the students. Sadly, we did not get the funding for the social workers and smaller class sizes. But that is something we will continue to work on, because it definitely is something we need to be looking at to support our students, because the more eyes we have on our students, the more, hopefully the less bullying, because more people can see what's happening within the classrooms and the school. I have a shout out to Riverbend and Spotsylvania's marching bands. They both put on 2 amazing marching band invitationals, and I was able to attend both of them. I even got to volunteer at Riverbend. All of our bands participated, as did bands from around the state, and it was wonderful, and I'm thoroughly impressed with all of the students and the volunteers that put it together, because it was definitely an effort. And then lastly, I just want the board to know that on November 4th, I will be in Washington, D.C. with 2 of our social workers at the National Conference for the National Association for the Education of Homeless Children and Youth. I will be presenting with our 2 social workers. It is the second time that I have presented at this conference. Our social workers have presented a few more times at this conference, but I just wanted my board to know that on November 4th, I will be presenting at that national conference in Washington, D.C. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. We have Ms. Phelps.
Thank you. So one thing that did strike me sitting up here and watching the hands-on presentation of the We Cycled. I've been a part of We Cycled since my children were little, and now they're older now, but I have a lot of friends who do volunteer there, and I just enjoy it, and I know the community does also, and it's really nice to see the collaboration. And one thing that did strike me is the Teacher of the Year from the Spotsylvania County Career and Tech Center. So I always say, and it's one thing I will continue to say, Spotsylvania County has a gem, and it's a hidden gem, and I continue to talk to my business friends, the community, about our Spotsylvania County Career and Technical Center. And you know what? This work right here is what our students have to offer back in collaboration with the rest of our community. So it works. It does. And I'm just grateful for it. I'm a tech kid myself, so I guess I might be, you know, a little biased right there when it comes to that. But and I've done very well for myself with that. And I also have to say that I did get a chance to go over to the Expo Center, and I did have see all the volunteers outside that helped me park my vehicle, which was really nice. And when I got inside, I did see a lot of the students that I knew when they were younger. And and it was fascinating to sit there and watch them not really know where they're going or who they're speaking of, but to watch the drones, to see that they can operate that, to give them a glimmer. And it was almost like inquisitive. They wanted to go over there and touch everything, and the barber that was there, they all gathered around there and they wanted to get involved. And they just were fascinated by it. So it opened up the minds, I feel, with that. And the Fredericksburg Regional Chamber of Commerce was awesome with that. And their volunteers that they had, along with Renee Daniels and the Spotsylvania County Schools. So, and I need to make a shout out to the bus drivers, because the way that they backed those buses in there and the way that they had them all angled and organized and shuttled the kids in and shuttled them out was just, I couldn't do it, but I'm just grateful for that. So that's all I have to share. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Phelps. Ms. Graham.
Hello. October is upon us, and as we all know, that's the beginning of budget season, which everyone knows is my favorite time of the year. And I just found something very interesting that happened last week, and there was a presentation to the Board of Supervisors by a public safety request to emergency fund the need to bring their employees closer to market level. And they got overwhelming support from the Board of Supervisors. And I am so grateful that this is a positive sign for our county and our public service employees, that it seems to be the tide is changing, and that our supervisors are recognizing that kicking the can down the road for years is going to catch up with them eventually. So the request from the Public Safety Department was for $6.4 million to emergency adjust the pay scales for about 600 employees. And it hasn't been voted on yet, hasn't been approved yet, but it got overwhelming support. And I just think that's a huge step on behalf of the supervisors to recognize that all the public service in our county has been underpaid for many years. We've all been subjected to the Evergreen study for the past 3 to 4 years. The county has already had their 3rd year of implementation, and so this emergency $6.4 million is after 3 years of Evergreen adjustment, so they're still struggling to come to market level, which is what I had pointed out when Evergreen released their study, that if we took 3 years to implement their suggestions, that's fantastic, but that only brings us to 3 years ago levels. So even though we would still be behind the market by 3 years, even after adjustments. And so they found that to be true, which is why they needed another adjustment. So I'm so happy that they're getting the support they're getting, as we are only on our 3rd year of our implementation this coming budget season. So just a reminder that the request is between 7 and 8 million for the pay adjustment for 3,000 employees. So it's a bigger number, but it's the 3rd year of our study to just bring us to levels where we should have been 3 years ago. So just as the public security sector is going to still need some adjustments, we are as well. And so I just thought that their response to that presentation last week was so promising, that they're really eager to bring those salaries up to a competitive market level. So I hope that that looks good for our 3,000 employees at this budget season.
Thank you, Ms. Graham. Dr. Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would want to also echo the compliments to all of the coordination that went into preparing for Discover Your Future. When you think of the 5 school divisions, all the multitude of buses, the 100-plus vendors, just to make that happen, and that's our first year, one out of the gate. And I know that, there's been debriefing going on as to how we can improve it for next year, and I look forward to how that can be improved I know if we can get the whole expo center, it will definitely improve. The decibels of sound were way up there. And so my ears are sensitive to it, so I can imagine how everybody else is too. But really, really well done in the coordination. Also want to take a shout out to the Freelance Star for the articles that appeared this last week. One highlighting Discovers Your Future as well as the Teacher Academy. It shows what good work is occurring and all the collaboration that's going on to make both of those events happen. Also like to bring up a topic that was brought to my attention by a patron in the Cortland district about high school students parking off campus, and to take a look at the permit parking fee that we charge, which is $80. It was mentioned to me that there is no charge in Prince William. I checked 7 out of the 12 schools there, and looks like they are charging $100. But I would like to have something verified, because even if we consider that the land or the area where the students are parking was paid for by the taxpayers, it may have been considered as free territory or free place to park, but those spaces need to be maintained, and there is ongoing operational costs. So I'd like to first, and I want to bring this up under new business, that we confirm if there are any school divisions that are not charging. If there are, that we would know that. It would be good to know before we take any steps in that path, down that path. And keeping in mind that if there's a policy change, that it impacts the budget. And so what is actually being charged and what is the revenue? Because if it's $80 per student for the year, it depends on the number of students for each high school. What would that delta be in revenue? And the third item, once this is compiled, bring it back to the board in a report so that we can then consider as a board whether we want to request a consideration of that item, as we could be considering whether to sunset that kind of cost for the parents. Because it was asserted that students are parking off campus to avoid parking on campus, that it was because of the fee, I don't necessarily buy that. That's possible, but it could be that students may have other things that they don't want to have on campus, and for that reason want to be off campus. But either way, I think it is a topic that I want to bring up under new business that the board consider as we getting into budget season and budget considerations. With that, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer, and I'd just like to make, I just want to ditto all the comments everyone had made about the event at the Expo Center. Well done. It's an excellent opportunity for our young people to discover their future and see what their passions may lead them to 5, 10, 15 years down the road. My son, my youngest son now is 24 years old. I remember vividly him being in 3rd grade at Courthouse Road Elementary. Seemed like yesterday. Time goes by fast, and we need to expose our children to as many opportunities as they can absorb to find out what their real passions are and allow them to move in that direction. So well done on the Discover Your Future. Excuse me, I've got a little wisp in my voice. I got that frog coming back. Also with sports, field hockey, but I'm one that is looking for an expansion of middle school sports that is even greater than just one sport. Field hockey is an important sport, so is baseball. We have to have facilities, we have to have the infrastructure in order to support it, but I think the value of middle school sports, especially the expansion of it, is invaluable for our children. They have an opportunity to participate in ways that you can't learn in the classroom, which is leadership, the ability to be part of something that's bigger than yourself. There is great value in being a part of a team. And if your passion is field hockey, baseball, football, whatever it is, And if we have the capacity to provide that kind of venue for you to grow and be nurtured, then I'm excited about it. There's so many other things I'd like to talk about, but some of it I'm going to wait until we discuss the strategic plan. So at this point, I'll turn over the comments to Dr. Baker for superintendent comments. Dr. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and ladies and gentlemen of the board. Because I have a few different special reports, I'll be brief in my comments, but I just wanted to acknowledge our students that came out tonight to not only articulate their perspectives and articulate very well their perspectives on things such as expanding middle school sports and field hockey, but also the high school diplomats program. And it reminded me of something that I wanted to reinforce with the school board and with our staff. When I started in 2012, I know that it's a bit idealistic. We are here at the Administrative Services, we're a business center. This is where business takes place. But I had hoped intentionally that we would slowly transform it into an educational center as well, where if students could feel as much as possible and families welcome to come here and engage in activities that are really about promoting educational opportunities and also about putting on display the very skills that we want to see our students develop. And as we're talking a lot right now about the 5 C's, communication and the ability to articulate in front of audiences is not an easy thing, especially when a lot of communication that we're all involved in now is basically texting or something on a line and not necessarily face-to-face. So I just want to applaud our students who came out tonight. And as we have had other displays in the board office and we continue to have the artwork displayed, I hope that the board will continue to help promote that this is, as well as being a business center, also an educational center. And then there was one, I know we had several speakers, one speaker who came from the community was talking about, and this particular thing that was shared I couldn't agree with more, is that as we continue to try to grasp and tackle more and more complex challenges, and topics of mental health came up. Bullying always comes up as an isolated, separate thing, but most of us do know that it is tied to so many other challenges, including mental health and including other types of challenges and instabilities that our students and families face. As we get towards later in the meeting, the potential adoption of the strategic plan, I couldn't have agreed more with one thing that she said about having community conversations. And I do think that what is really embedded in our current draft that is before the board for adoption this evening is the future of our strategic plan is not just about focus groups and having in isolation conversations, but beginning to have those larger community conversations on topics that frankly none of us can overcome in isolation by ourselves. And I think mental health as a very broad and complex topic is one. More recently, I applaud our folks for working at the request of Ms. Shelley with the Sheriff's Office and the Justice Initiative on human trafficking. And I think we want to continue to find opportunities to do that. I do know that in the works right now with our staff and the Sheriff's Department, we are also looking to do a community awareness event on vaping. And so that is more to come, but I just wanted to share those items before I come up for the special reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Baker. At this time, we're going to move to 14.01, board committee reports. Do we have any board committee reports? Anyone? Ms. Gramp.
Local finance board met on our quarterly basis, and we went over the quarter performance of OPEB, and we discussed potential for another contribution per our policy, with the potential for some carryover. That is all not confirmed yet, but it looks like we'll be able to make another contribution this year following our policy, and that is all we went into local finance.
Thank you, Ms. Graham. Dr. Meyer.
And Fleet Services as well has met, and we're moving right along, and everything's in good order.
Thank you. Any others? I just want to make a note that Head Start had the opportunity to entertain Miss Northam, the First Lady of Virginia. She came through, visited with Head Start, and she was very well received, and we were pleased to have her presence. And she had opportunity to read to our young people, and they enjoyed her thoroughly. And I found her to be a pleasant, not only very pleasant, but very charming First Lady, and I was honored to spend some time with her as she spent time with our children. We'll move on now to superintendent reports. Dr. Baker.
Thank you again. That was quick. I'm going to ask Mr. Keith Wolf if he would come up to the podium, and in creating kind of a transition or segue into what I've asked him to share briefly, the broad topic is instructional update. But I wanted to just highlight a couple of things this evening because I will never, and probably to my own detriment, try to always put out in front just the successes, because our focus, as will again later come up in the strategic planning, is about continuous improvement. Whenever you think you've arrived or you've reached a peak, that's a bad sign, and it can lead to apathy. And so we are always trying to get better. But what I probably don't do enough is to share, especially as we have many of our principals here. They have continued to do a superlative job in so many different areas. But this past Tuesday, almost a week ago, the Department of Education, and they've been releasing a lot of different data in piecemeal, data that showed federal pass rates and more recently accreditation pass rates, where again we were able to achieve 100% accreditation for the second straight year amidst more rigorous standards. And while some folks believe that's minimum, it's not minimum anymore, given the rigors of the assessments and the rigors of the standards, with not only not as the percentage of resources that we used to have, but a population of students that have more needs and more complex needs. But I'm just going to share with you a couple of data points that I'm particularly proud of, and I want to thank the school board, because it's without your support these types of things cannot occur either. And as we're about to talk in more depth about Discover Your Future, I wanted to just share a couple of points with you. The first is that when I started in 2012, we had an on-time graduation rate for all students of about 86%, just a little bit under that. This year, we have realized a 93.2% on-time graduation rate, which and our principals, all of them, but I know particularly our high school ones, are probably not only celebrating, and they should, but they're probably taking a deep breath, because I know that the keen pressure has been there to continue to make sure that more of our students are not leaving us, but are able to maintain that focus. And as we, again, are going to segue into Discover Your Future, I believe we're going to continue to capture more and more students as we continue to explore with every child their why, with their positive purpose for being in school in the first place. But along that number with on-time graduation rate, while one of our areas that we continually need to improve on is our pass rates for students with disabilities, we achieved not only the highest on-time graduation rate for all students, but we also achieved an on-time graduation rate for students with disabilities of almost 95%, which is, I believe, the highest that we've ever achieved. And these aren't just things that are happening from last year to this year. We have lifted some of these graduation rates in different reporting categories by as many as 10 to 15 percentage points. So again, I want to congratulate our folks. The other metric that was shared was the dropout rate, which is one that can be even more devastating when we consider students leaving or we don't know where they have gone to, but they have not left with any credential or any diploma. We have achieved our lowest on record 3.9% dropout rate, which is down from almost 6% from the previous year. And so again, congratulations to our schools. And while it is associated with high school, it really is about system progress in terms of those sorts of things. And I wanted to go back one more time to the students with disabilities category, one that's near and dear to my heart from where I began my career. Last year, we had 14.2% of our students who were students with disabilities that made up our dropout rate. 14% of it were students with disabilities. It is down to 4.79 this year. And so thank you for allowing me to share that, but I wanted to publicly acknowledge the work that our leaders and our teachers and our entire staff are doing. With that, I'll make one comment, and then I've asked Mr. Wolf to share a little bit more about Discover Your Future from the mass coordination effort, as well as the many partners that we had in, people have mentioned the volunteers, but Mr. Wolf is also probably not getting the credit that he deserves because he has embraced the opportunity. He has embraced the possibilities without knowing how, just knowing that his why and our why was that powerful. So one of the things that I was really impressed was how he and the members of the coordination team really challenged the business community that was at Discover Your Future with engaging the students in activities that were hands-on, that really could give them that spark. And that's what I was so blown away with over those 2 days, is that students were, and there were a lot of students, but I'm a former middle school principal, so it's really just having them all in the cafeteria at lunch together. But it was really impressive how with that many students in one location, how they were consistently engaged by so many different businesses and partners across the region. And I just, again, thank all of our team. I thank you, school board members, that took the time, that were able to take the time to come out and be there. That meant a whole lot to all of our staff that coordinated it. So with that, I've asked Mr. Wolf to put the icing on the cake and to give a little more detail, not only about what you saw and what you've read about, but also where we're going from here.
Sure thing. Well, good evening, board. Certainly do appreciate the comments and the recognition, and really it's very much warranted towards Renee Daniels and Amber Blako and Emily Hall and Sue Venable-Shelton and just some of the visionaries. But the Chamber of Commerce, without the Chamber of Commerce and the businesses and the partnerships, this is really a testimonial to the power of coming together collaboratively as one and working for a common cause. So this inception of Discover Your Future took place about a year ago, and everybody else that we had spoken to said, if you're going to do something like this, you better plan about 18 months. Well, no, we're ready to go. Let's just see how we can make this work. And so with that in mind, from our businesses, we had about 88 businesses, and we needed the entire expo center, but we realized that. We've already booked it for next year, so you can put it on your calendars, November 3rd through the 5th. And this was the first one out of the gate, and we couldn't be more proud. And again, from the partnerships that were created and for our businesses and our community to expose our students to the opportunity of what exists out there. And I will share is that, and Ms. Phelps, you alluded to it, what a gem we have in the Career and Tech Center. But this was Chancellor High School, and all of our high schools have viable, very robust career and technical education centers, that they get some of this there, and if they want, they can get it over at Career and Tech at the same time. And it's just a wonderful opportunity that those students, I couldn't be more proud as I sat there tonight and for the teacher to come up, but for the students to be so, see, I didn't think they were nervous. I thought that they were very articulate in regards to what they were doing and spoke so well to the mortise and tenon joints, and anybody who's ever put those together, they know how difficult they can be, and you better hope that they line up. You know, so very proud of them. And also for the VATFACs, for the teacher, Terry Evers, to be recognized tonight. If you saw at the Discover Your Future event, our Career and Tech Center was there, and our students were presenting. That was phenomenal to see. And to be able to go up to them and talk about you are preparing and influencing the next generation of those students who come up. So from the graduation rate to the dropout rate, it all connects. And if we can time into something early in 8th grade is way too late, 6th grade, you go back to 5th grade. We have a conference that we're going to be sending some elementary counselors to go ahead and get some experience about what job prospects exist later in the future in regards to the 16 career clusters. I couldn't be more proud of the Career and Tech, but the partnership, you know, without Renee and Amber and Sue and Emily, I don't think it would have been possible. So it was driven, but the partnerships from the other school divisions and the support of our boards across the 5 school districts and divisions in the region. It was phenomenal. So.
Thank you. And Mr. Wolf can just stay there,
Nope.
I believe, because the next thing that, no, actually, we're going to move him to the end because it's going to segue. I apologize.
That's okay.
So I've also asked Mr. Don Upperco to share an update with the board. As you know, well, of course, all of you know, you were engaged in a redistricting effort last year, and I wanted him to provide not only an update about where our enrollment is at this critical juncture for the new school year, but also we had alluded to, and I think with the consensus of the board, that we would begin to pursue a more comprehensive process in terms of both establishing future enrollment projections, looking at how we need to accommodate that potential growth with our buildings and our facilities, as well as if we need any additional redistricting considerations across multiple levels. So Mr. Upperco is going to share with you a brief update on that.
Thank you, Dr. Baker, members of the board. I'll be brief. It's hard to fit in between Mr. Wolf. You know, he's very dynamic. So you don't like to be sandwiched by somebody dynamic like that. Especially when you can't get to the right slide. We'd like to start off by giving you a brief overview here, a comparison between the September 30th figures from 2018, 2019, and their September 30th figures from 2019, 2020. We use September 30th because that's a common baseline and enables us to build our CIP and our future enrollment projections from a good baseline. You'll note that we had a total increase of 261 students. 23,935 students on September 30th, 2019 versus last year at the same time, 23,674 students. And that includes our pre-K through our 12th grade. That represents an overall increase in student population of about 1.1%. From the preceding school year. And breaking that down, it is an increase of 43 elementary students, 159 middle school students, and 59 high school students as we compare the 2 years. I'd like to take a minute. This is the first time we've ever had an opportunity since the redistricting to talk about our most recent high school redistricting effort and to take a look at some real numbers as a result of that. As you recall, 4 of our 5 high schools were involved in that redistricting effort. So as we look at Chancellor, they increased a total of 29 students, 1,317 in 2019 as opposed to 1,288 last year. Cortland had an increase of 237 students, keeping in mind that that is partially due to the additional capacity of over 300 seats with the new renovation. So Cortland has gone from 1,176 students last year to this year's total of 1,413 students. And you'll note a positive here, Massaponax decreased by 272 students in September 30th of 2019. You see a new figure of 1,745 students. That compares to last year's total at that time of 2,017 students. And you'll note that had we not done the redistricting effort, we had projected that Massaponax High School this year was actually going to have 2,077 students. So Initially, it looks like our redistricting efforts are going the direction that we hoped that they would. Riverbend was not involved in the redistricting, but they had a slight decrease. In fact, as slight as you can have, they only decreased by 1 student, and their total for 2019 was actually 1,918 students. Now, you'll see a Spotsylvania High School increase of 61 students, 1,204 students in 2019 as opposed to 1,143 students in 2018. And that, again, was one of the objectives of our redistricting. Our division has contracted with Cropper GIS LLC for a 10-year population and enrollment forecast for each school by grade. The study will include an updated demographic and geographic information system. It will help identify where additional future capacity will be needed, and that will include a look at renovations in the future, potentially additions or possibly new construction. This study will help identify future CIP projects to meet student enrollment needs. It projects will be included in upcoming school bond referendum project lists as we get prepared for that effort. And Cropper is willing to undertake a K-12 boundary study following the completion of the enrollment study in 2020-2021. And that will be a comprehensive enrollment study, boundary study. Cropper will present their findings at your December school board meeting. So, any questions?
Do we have any questions from the board at this time? Any questions from the board at this time? Ms. Phelps.
So the Cropper company that's going to come in and give us a presentation, is an RFP put out there for their services, or did we already contract for that RFP?
We've contracted with them because they're way below the threshold they're a sole source. This is a sole source contract, and the board doesn't have to approve the contract unless it's $100,000. We're way below that with Cropper. They do a lot of work in Virginia. They've done Frederick County schools up near Winchester. They've done Henrico County, Richmond City schools, Alexandria, Arlington. They have a good reputation, and they're demographers as well as enrollment projection folks. So they look at the whole county itself and the population there, not just the enrollment of the schools.
In Stafford, did Stafford use them?
No.
Okay.
This is a different company than Stafford.
And so I have another question. On one of the slides, we've gone through the redistricting, and I appreciate you bringing those numbers back to show us how it is panning out to your recommendations. So on one of the slides, you had mentioned the redistricting of the company coming in. Has there been any discussion from the board as far as Battlefield and Berkeley districts with the census being brought in to redraw the lines from the school board? I just received some communications from public that said that the schools were looking at Battlefield and Berkeley working with the Board of Supervisors to redraw the lines due to the census. So is there any facts behind that?
What you might be referring to, and I could be wrong, would be they look at the political districts every few years, and I think that might be what you're referring to. In other words, the voting districts, and not the school boundaries, if I'm understanding correctly.
Oh, okay, so they already talked about, so that was already discussed, like political boundaries. I was just wondering if that included the political boundaries would affect our enrollment boundaries, so that's why I was.
I don't believe it has anything to do with our.
Okay, I wasn't sure who discussed it, whether it was the school division or school board members, so I just want clarification.
Mr. Appico, can I just want to make sure, since that has been, I want to make sure it's really clear. I think there was a question, have we as the school division participated in any dialogue relative to political districts?
With whom?
With anyone, because I wanted to make sure, because I think the question was, had the schools or the school board members been engaged in any discussion about the census information and potential redrawing of political districts?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, and
No,
I was not aware, so I wanted to make sure we answered.
Right, that was my question,
question.
to,
Okay.
to just find out if the division was involved with those discussions, because it was brought to me, so that's why I'm bringing it here, just to bring it up, because the census is coming up, and, you know, we are looking at redistricting, so I want to see how they all mesh together and work together, so I bring it up to you guys to ask you. And thank you for the clarity on that, though. Thanks.
Yes. Any other questions? And before I go into that, I want to just say our responsibility is attendance zones. The Board of Supervisors, their responsibility is political zones, so, yeah. Well, I believe the Board of Supervisors have to finish the drawing of that or approve it, would they not? Yeah, they would have to approve that. That's clearly not in our bailiwick. Yeah. Any other comments?
Right, I guess to clarify that, I was just clarifying that the school board members we were staying in our line with politics with the Board of Supervisors to redraw voting lines for, you know, to become elected again. So to keep the politics out, that's why I brought it up. I don't know who discussed it or whatnot, that's why I'm asking. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
All I know is that the next step would be for us to look at enrollment, school boundary lines, and regardless of the other aspects of the political.
Our purview is attendance zones. We have nothing to do with that. We don't have anything to do with that. I want to say, is there any other comments? I want to say to you, Mr. Upperco, I thought your presentation was pretty dynamic too.
Thank you. Even a blind squirrel gets a nut every now and then, right? Thank you.
I thought it was pretty dynamic. Maybe you're a dynamic duo. No, I have a couple questions. In your opinion, the numbers as they fleshed out, do you consider our effort above average in terms of meeting our numbers for redistricting, right where we expected, or below what we expected?
I think we're right about where we expected, given some of the caveats, you know, that you didn't want to move a senior child out of the school that they had been attending, even if their attendance zone changed, as well as juniors. So yeah, I think we're right about where we thought we would be. And I would commend the high school principals and their staff and the poor registrars. As we were getting everything settled to start the year, we were really busting tail to try to make sure that everything was done the correct way. And there was a lot of communication with individual parents and whatnot in some of those redistricted zones. And I think by and large, we did a good job, to be honest with you. But it was certainly a team effort.
Yeah, I also want to commend the principals of the schools too for doing their part in mitigating a lot of the rancor by making sure information was disseminated in a proper way and allowing access to the schools so that the children would have or feel more comfortable about the process. So I just wanted to mention that. And then I also would like for us to continue to follow the progress of the redistricting or the attendance zones, because we're going to have to engage in a middle school and elementary school at some point, and we all know that's a little bit more problematic, and there's going to be a lot more intensity from our stakeholders, our parents specifically, as we consider making adjustments. And I think it's beneficial for them to know that we've had some success with the high school level, and that we're going to take advantage of lessons learned from last time, but allow us to do it in a way that's proper that maximizes our resources. So thank you for taking on that endeavor, because when you usually talk about attendance zones, nobody's happy and no one feels like they won. And I think in this particular case, we accomplished a very difficult task in a way where there wasn't a lot of rancor. And so I consider that a great success, and I salute you for that, sir.
Well, we had a lot of good support. I want to personally thank Dr. Baker. I was dreading this process, and it worked out much better than I anticipated, and he gave me 100% support, as did the board. So I appreciate that. All of us that were working on this project appreciate the support from the top down.
Thank you. Dynamic report. Dr. Baker, anyone else?
Yes, and now Mr. Wolf will come up and he will provide an update on middle school sports expansion and segue into a regulation or set of regulations that the board's considering this evening.
Hello again, everybody. So I would first like to start off by thanking the students who came tonight and Ms. Gallagher. I've had the opportunity to speak with Ms. Gallagher a number of different times, and I can tell you that her professionalism and her passion are very much on display, and I appreciate that, from an administrative point of view, but certainly from a professional point of view and personal as well. So tonight, what I'd like to go ahead and do at the request of the board from about 2 months or 3 months ago, there was a request to come through with a little bit more, some concrete figures as what it would be to go ahead and implement different sports at the middle school level. Although there is not a formal vote on any of the middle school additions tonight, because it has to go through the budget process, you will see that. So, but I at least want to give you some pre-budget considerations to think about as we move forward in regards to the incorporation of various sports across the middle school. And then, as Dr. Baker had alluded to, following this presentation, then I do have an action item to go ahead and look at, I don't want to say stopgap because I think it's used all the time, but something that might be able to mitigate while this decision takes place from the board. So once again, good evening, everybody, and the hope today is to talk to you a little bit about middle school sports additions. And in case there's any questions that I may not be able to answer, I do have Henry Thody from Battlefield Middle School, who's hanging out way back there, because I told those guys to come up when I was ready, and they left me hanging already. So, but I have Sarah French also, who's both are athletic directors, Henry at Battlefield Middle School and Sarah at Post Oak Middle School. And then I have Sean Hockaday to go ahead and answer any specific questions as it relates to what we're about to present. Okay. Henry's a little intimidating standing right beside me as well. So, that's my bouncer. All right, so as we look at the current middle school athletic options or opportunities that you see, you'll see that the slate of activities that we have for females are basketball, soccer, volleyball, track and field, and softball. And for our gentlemen, we have football, basketball, wrestling, soccer, and again, track and field. So some sports considerations that have come up through this process have to take into consideration Title IX. And this is a slide that I had presented to the board once before that basically says when considering the addition of a sport to an athletic program, and in order to comply with the requirements of Title IX is that you must consider adding another sport to the opposite gender. So essentially if you add a female sport, it's a male sport, or a male sport and a female sport. So what you see there for consideration to go ahead and bring up to the board tonight is taking a look at cross country, girls field hockey that was brought about a little bit earlier, and also boys baseball. So for cross country, basically this one is, you never want to say $24,500 is an easy get, but if you look at field space, this is outlining a field at the school. I believe it's 3.1 miles that our ADs felt, our representative ADs felt that could be accomplished at the school. The startup equipment costs are $7,000 to do that, and that's basically $1,000 per middle school for supplies and marking things out for the season. And this would be a fall season sport. Personnel would be $10,500, and that's roughly the stipend times 7. Official costs, there is no official cost for this. So a nice round zero, and then transportation costs would be $1,000 per each school, and that's just an estimate in regards to as they travel from site to site, just the additional funds that they would need there. So the estimated total startup cost for the board to consider as we go through the budget process is $24,500, and that would be a yearly expense for us to go ahead and support the schools. For girls field hockey, I'm going to present to you 3 different options, okay? So, and in those 3 options, I just want to make sure that I can get to this. Option 1 basically has 7 new field spaces that are associated with that, and that's the cost to go ahead and prepare the field. So, and with those 7 new fields, and Sean, if you have any specific question, he can certainly address that, but they would need what they call a reel mower, and the reel mower, each field is about $30,000 a piece to put in, so that times 7 is $210,000. The reel mower is $20,000 to go ahead and cut that grass that they would need at each school, so for a total of $140,000. The bleachers are $6,000 a piece, new to go ahead and put in. Startup equipment costs to get the schools ready to go is about $83,000. Personnel would be, again, what I had mentioned earlier through the cross-country, the stipend times 7. Official costs would be about $6,000 per year. Transportation costs is, again, that $1,000 per sport, so $7,000 for a total of $498,500. So the yearly fee on this would come out to $26,500. So if you look at that 7 new field spaces, $210,000, the next one would be new practice field space. And essentially option 2 is to add a practice field only and allow play on the football fields at the school, which would need to be upgraded to play field hockey. They're a little harder on the field, so it would just be an upgrade. So that would be $105,000, and then again, the reel mower that would be needed. Everything else pretty much stays the same for a total estimated cost of incorporation of $393,000. So a yearly maintenance or a yearly fee recurring cost of $26,500. Option 3 would be using existing football field space, and option 3 is to use that space mentioned, which would need to be upgraded for practice and for play. So, in the yearly fees associated with that would be $25,000, because a little bit less to go ahead since you're not upkeeping 2 fields or leveling 2 fields there. For baseball, so Battlefield Middle School would need a baseball field. Now, if the board remembers, there was a discussion that had taken place with Parks and Rec, and our students essentially would have to be off those fields by 5 for Parks and Rec to have a 5:30 start. Our middle school sports, once they get to the event, start at 4 o'clock, so that only gives them about an hour. So that's why having this space to incorporate. Battlefield Middle School, from what I understand, would be about, since it's an entirely new field with fencing, would be right around $75,000 as you see costs here. The $25,000 would actually go towards Thornburg Middle School to go ahead and extend that field out a little bit. It doesn't need as much of a new field. 5 updates to existing fields at $8,000 a piece would be $40,000. 7 new bleachers, again, as we come down. Startup equipment costs are $60,000. And then you have your personnel, official costs, and transportation costs that rounds out baseball to $265,500. So the rationale for adding these sports are essentially for cross-country it provides an additional co-ed sport for all grades in the traditional fall season. So this would be for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students to participate in. If the board, I'll just kindly remind the board that middle school students, 6th graders, we do not allow them to participate in football. That's just a 7th and 8th grade option. Baseball is additional boys sport for all grades in the traditional spring season. Field hockey would be an additional girls sport for all grades in the spring season that will not compete with girls soccer season or high school field hockey season. So it would be on the other side of that. Volleyball, we would just move to the fall season, the traditional fall season as opposed to where it's at now. Girls basketball moved to a traditional winter season. And the beauty is, with the board's consideration, that we go, again, once we go through the budget process, if approved, it would take the number of middle school sport options from 10 to 13, 12 opportunities for 6th grade students, because football would not be permitted. So the potential sports per season, this sort of gets into the weeds a little bit, but cross country would be a fall sport. And then in the spring, field hockey and boys baseball. Example of sport edition schedule, sports start on the very first day of school for middle school, and most people understand that you have to have about 15 days of practice in for football, and I believe it's 10 for the other sports. Minimum of 10 for the other sports. So you got to hit the ground running on that. So, but what this would do is at least level out and provide 2 seasons of sports occurring in the first semester and 2 seasons of sports occurring in the second semester as well. So what the example happens to show us is that we can add 3 sports to the current middle school sports schedule with little disruption to the current Monday through Thursday model. So that's what the sports do right now. On Fridays, middle schools don't have those activities. They extend that for other activities where their school wants to have a dance or whatever the case may be, and it doesn't conflict there. So it's been Monday through Thursday. So it keeps Fridays open for other middle school events. And the schedule can be completed so field usage is split. So field hockey in the spring is competing with boys soccer. So boys soccer can be often away at one contest while field hockey is home and playing another contest. So from the last time that I did a presentation before the board, what I want you to know is that I just can't say enough about the individuals who are behind me, is that what can we tackle? What's the barrier that we can push through? What does this look like? And I will tell you is that you have many teachers and administrators who do the same thing. What's the problem? How do we overcome it? Let's see what we can do. So scheduling is already a huge concern. We've crossed that off because we've taken a very constructive way of taking a look at it, and these individuals have come up with a very creative way that we can incorporate it in with minimal impact. Consider adjusting sports season. That's part of that scheduling process. Some things to consider with the AD position need to become halftime or full-time. I'm telling you, by adding these additional sports, I am a proponent for at least a halftime activity director. They're teachers. They have off one block, they have a planning block at the same time. And I can tell you, having worked, knowing Henry's a student, but working with Sarah as a teacher when I was out at Post Oak, it's a tremendous amount of responsibility. And when it rains, holy cow, these guys are trying to do double duty while they're doing their normal duties. So kudos to them. So I would ask the board to consider. Annual middle school transportation budget would need to increase. I believe it sits at right around $3,500. So in order to incorporate these sports, just adjusting that. Additional staff duties to cover events. And then that last set of bullets, it's the approximate investment to incorporate all 3 sports. And I wanted to give you that total. Now, I will tell you that that's fluid, but that's about as close as we can get it right now about what that looks like. So the board has context as you go through the budget season. So option 1 would be right around $789,000. Option 2, $683,000. Option 3, $508,000, with the recurring costs of $74,200 per year. But at the current stipend rate, $31,500 of that figure are stipends to go ahead and pay for your coaches. So, and I would say, as we look at our athletic directors or activity directors at the middle school level, I want to say it was 4 years ago that they received a 20% increase, I believe, in their pay, and that came out to just I forget, I want to say like $600. It wasn't a ton spread out over a year and what it looks like. So. For the work that they do and work that they're going to do. But I will tell you another missing component that I would ask the board to consider. We have athletic trainers at the high school level. We know from concussion awareness is that to keep in mind that what that looks like at our middle school level, because our athletic directors do that too at the middle school level. They're the ones who are really the proponents of watching if a student gets hurt, concussion awareness, making sure our coaches are certified. There's a lot that happens to be involved. So at this time, I would be happy to go ahead and answer any questions or have them do that. They're more of the experts.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Do we have any questions? Dr. Meyer?
In your considerations, are you also planning on the use of the turf fields as we'll be finishing 3 this year?
Based upon their availability, I would say that's always a consideration, and especially if we have rain events, if that field's not in use, we know that we can use that field, a turf field, right?
We also have 2 middle schools Post Oak Middle School and Chancellor Middle School, who use that high school field for our home football games. So
That's
we
right.
would be using those for those games.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Grant?
Just from your presentation and the safety aspect, I would support the middle school ADs being full-time because that's a lot on their plate and they have to guarantee that all the coaches are trained and they would also have to take on the trainer aspect. Is the full-time trainer in either option 1, 2, or 3, or?
Those figures are not associated with this as a staffing component, but it
Right.
is something that I can certainly bring during budget season to
Right,
add
so
that
the
to see
only
what it looks like.
staffing adjustment that was in the options was the stipend estimate, which was 31.5.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So there was no estimate for any change to the AD position?
No, just guessing about what that looks like, that's a full-time teacher salary.
Right.
About what that would be, so.
Okay.
But I'll put that in the next presentation, definitely.
That we would need that kind of coverage if we went that high with our number of sports.
Dr. Meyer, go ahead.
Just kind of a follow-up question. I was just thinking in my mind, pretty soon we should be receiving, end-of-year carryover funds, and I know part of it has to go toward OPEB responsibilities. But is there any possibility that carryover funds could be used for the one-time expenditures and therefore the operating budget side would pick up?
I would
the
say
other
that
part?
there's always a possibility for that, but I know that there are competing needs, especially
Competing needs, right.
instructionally at this point.
I understand. I was just trying to think of options.
Yes.
Ms. Shelley.
Would the field upgrades be able to be put into a CIP?
Yes, ma'am. Because you would either be adding a new field or upgrading, that would justify the CIP guidelines because you're one, the cost, and plus you're adding value in the longevity of it. So we could use CIP funds for those needs.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a few questions. I'd like, on the personnel issue, you had $10,500. Did that include for a head coach and assistant coach?
No, sir, that's just one coach.
Yeah, when you're dealing with middle school students, or even at the high school level, we already experienced at the high school level, there's a need for supervision. I think that number's too low.
If I may,
Yeah.
all of our middle school sports, with the exception of football, only have one stipend coach. Everybody else is, well, football's 2, everybody else is 1.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Yeah, I understand that, and I understand why we were at that point. And I think we need to relook at, we've had some situations in the past where there was some concerns about supervision in the locker rooms. And I just think that's something that we need to consider when we start budgeting and trying to do this in the right way. So that's one part. And I think we, like Ms. Graham said, we need to budget in for the trainers as well. And we need to budget in, and I agree with their activity directors eventually being on a full-time basis, because we are asking them to take on more, and we are holding their feet to the fire on so many other tasks that they should be properly compensated for. So, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just, for clarity's sake, just so I know the path in moving forward, so I can grab accurate figures for you all, is that for the personnel, are you proposing adding an assistant coach per sport?
Yes.
Or just the ones? Okay.
Yes, because like, for example, on the cross country at the high school level, you have a male coach and you have a female coach. We have middle school students, you have one coach trying to supervise that many kids. That puts that coach in a precarious situation, but it also puts the kids in a bad spot.
Thank you. I was just seeking clarity. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, good.
So I just believe that we should consider that, having a coach and an assistant coach. The structure on how much they get paid, I mean, that's going to be entirely up to you all, but I think we need to have that, and we should compensate appropriately for that. And then the other thing is, I'd like to see an Aunt Sally solution, if you will, of how do we do those different courses of action that you discussed with consideration towards all the fields, artificial turf fields being put in. See, the thing about artificial turf fields is that you can play on them any time. All you got to do is turn on the lights, and you can practice almost any time. High school can practice almost any time. And I know at Post Oak, they do use the football field for a variety of their different activities. And so I'm sure there'll be opportunities for the middle school sports, especially soccer and field hockey, to practice on those fields without considering purchasing new ones. So, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, but I think we should be able to war game that and see if it's feasible, one, but two, what would the cost be? You know,
certainly.
So those are the things that I would like to see in it.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Baker?
Thank you to the board for the questions and some additional direction for Mr. Wolf and the staff. I wanted to just follow up regarding the coaching at middle school, because just like at high school, could you all give me, and I know it may not be the same at every school, but just a ballpark of how many of those, again, singular coached sports, just one coach, approximately how many of the sports have a volunteer or multiple volunteer coaches that assist on top of the stipend coach?
It depends. I know, like, my football team, I treat my football at Battlefield like I did when I was at Chancellor High School. So I make sure, it's myself and 5 other people. I was lucky enough to build relationships, get those guys to help volunteer. But I go to other schools and they have one coach or two coaches. I know basketball, soccer, we have one coach. And, we just roll the dice and pray, and he doesn't have to leave in the ambulance, because then who coaches the team? So that's how it is at Battlefield. I can't say how it is at other schools.
No, I appreciate that. And if, just again, for me in terms of, as we begin to continue to map this out budget-wise, potentially, could we get a rundown of what the capacity looks like at each school for each sport? Thanks. And one more thing that it sounds like there's been some ongoing discussions, and I know we have a very strong partnership with Parks and Rec, Spotsylvania Parks and Recreation. But I do want to just ask and maybe probe a little, do you feel like we have exhausted our discussions with them in terms of our ability to expand our opportunities for middle school sports in a partnership with them, and not just from the field perspective, but certainly the field perspective is probably the biggest one.
That's really the carrier on that one. So once we heard that we've got to get off the field, it's getting our students there and then getting off the field in time by 5 o'clock. I just think it shortchanges our students in regards to what that looks like. It doesn't mean that we can't solidify and continue to build relationships to see what it looks like. The idea of incorporating our turf fields, I think, is a solid idea. And I don't want to say that hasn't been considered, but as we look to build these out and the way our turf fields are being built out, it's just not an option for us at this time, but we can certainly take a look at it later on.
Well, and I think with that, the school board has made an unanimous decision over time to try to not only install one, but try to install multiple ones. I am just wondering if over time there is any look at that from the Parks and Rec perspective in terms of also having fields that could utilize more capacity, because obviously we're going to include them in our ability to, we're gonna partner with them to use those fields of ours. So is there any discussion about that from the county side?
There is some ongoing discussion. As you know, we are already partnered with Parks and Rec in many ways, but one of the things is if we go to adding more fields, one of the things that Parks and Rec will be able to provide for us is helping us maintain those fields some, because of course the more fields we have, the more fields they have in that realm. They are pretty much pushed for space themselves right now, but that doesn't mean we can't continue to look at, what both they have and we have to work together on. And I'm willing to work with Mr. Wolf in any kind of way we can. And some of it depends on which sport you play at what time of year. So that may be something we may have to rethink and look at if we go to spring or fall with one or the other, just because it's better to play some sports at different times per the surface, and sometimes it can cost you more or less to use that type of service. So we'll keep on working those figures and see what we can come up with.
Ms. Shelley, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Something you mentioned with Parks and Rec, if we grow the number of fields we have, then they have more fields to be able to use as well. Would there be a way to partner with Parks and Rec in their CIP and our CIP to build or improve the fields that we have or that we would be wanting to use for these additional sports, because that would give them those fields to use as well? Is that something that has ever come up, as maybe partnering in the cost?
We have done some upgrades in the past together of some fields. It's been a while, but that's something that we can discuss with them if, of course, if the board, Dr. Baker, agrees for me to have those conversations with them. We can discuss their CIP and our CIP and how we can work together. And I'm pleased to do so, to see what we can work out.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on. Or did you have another report, Dr. Baker? Okay. We'll move on to 15.01, approval of revision to School Board Regulations IGDAA-R1, eligibility for participation in Virginia High School League activities, grade 9 through 12, and IGDAA-R2, eligibility for participation in interscholastic athletics, grade 6 through 8. Mr. Wolf.
Thank you, Chairman Braswell. So this evening, a presentation was provided just seconds ago to the board regarding the potential additions to the middle school athletic program. While these additions are sure to come under consideration during the FY21 budget process, an option does present itself to support not only students interested in participating in the sports previously presented, but to support junior varsity programs that have either recently experienced or have had historically low interest and, as a result, have had to forfeit their season. So therefore, revisions to School Board Regulations IGDAA-R1 and R2 are presented to the board's review and consideration. It is the administration's recommendation to approve additional language and edits to the following regulations IGDAA-R1 and R2 as presented.
I would like to make a motion to approve IGDAA-R1 and IGDAA-R2.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. We have a second by Ms. Gramp. So it's been properly moved and seconded. Any questions? We'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries 6-0 with one absent.
Thank you.
15.02, excuse me. Second reading approval of policy revisions for VSBA 2019 updates. It's recommended that the school board approves the proposed action each of the policies and regulations as outlined on the VSBA May 2019 Index Manual and Policy Checklist as presented. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Mr. Blaine. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Myers. Any questions? Any discussion? Ms. Phelps?
Might be a long one here, but so I went through these policies, and so JOB, which is formerly KFB, the instructional materials and surveys. In C, additional protections. It did say a parent or an emancipated student may, upon request, inspect any instructional material used as part of the educational curriculum of the student and any survey created by a third party before the survey is administered or distributed to a student. Any inspection shall be in accordance with policy KBA. Why are we taking that out? It's just crossed out on here, and is that?
Which policy is that again?
It's the JOB, it was formerly the KFB.
Okay.
So I have, it was just if we can have clarity as a parent, is that, so I'd like to have the option to inspect surveys and evaluations to my child. Does that not allow me to do that anymore? Or, I don't know, is that VSBA their suggestion?
I'm pulling it up. Just give us one moment to
pretty
pull it up, but thank you for the question. We're just we're
Here,
pulling that
you
up
can
from
see-
the...
yeah, it's right here.
I just have a comment on that, Mr. Chairman.
Why we're taking this part out.
It's a VSBA adjustment from the legal aspect, so Jennifer might be here.
Dr. Flonard, I think, is up, but it's JOB, and...
Like, why would we take it out? It's just my
There
question.
What
would
is something
be
that's been redlined, Dr. Flonard, and I'm just also...
And so here's my example. In other words, my son had PE, and then he went over to a health class or, personal, I don't know, it used to be called health class. I forgot what it's called now. But I went in, I did not, for our family, we did not agree at the time with what was in the curriculum. So I had to go to the school and sit with the guidance counselor and go over exactly what was in the curriculum that he was being taught within his health class. So, the question arises when I'm reading this: is that taking the ability of a parent out of the equation to ask for that? In other words, surveys that come through to my child from third parties, like these VXRs or VR glasses that they have out through Google, but they're a third party, would, ask my son about them. And so does it limit the parent here by taking that out from being given the opportunity to say, yes, I'd like my son to participate in that, or no?
The VSBA is actually the body, it was recommended from VSBA to actually just replace the policy. So if on the actual checklist that I believe Dr. Martin provided, the policy JOB is a new policy which was formerly JFB. It does not remove parents' ability to not have their students surveyed. It's just the Virginia School Board Association recommended that it was replaced with JOB, but it is not.
On my copy here, it has it, well, on the computer, it's all red. It's all red and crossed out. So it takes the parents. So that's why I'm asking for explanation.
Right. And my understanding, again, Dr. Martin might be able to provide more clarity, is that it's just a new policy from VSBA with language from KFB, and it was recommended to replace JOB. Not that it removes parents' rights. It's just as far as my understanding is, providing alignment and cleaning up of the policies from VSBA's perspective.
I get it, but the VSB, excuse me, I have the floor, thank you. The KFB is crossed out on my policy, and now it's renamed JOB, right?
Correct.
Okay, so this is the new JOB policy that replaces the KFB.
Okay.
Okay, that's all. I'm just clarifying that. So this is a new policy with this whole, all this crossed out that I just read. That's not included anymore, right?
That would be my understanding.
Yes, Ms. Phelps, sometimes what happens with the SBA when they start reviewing a lot of the different policies, they'll notice that they're similar, and sometimes they'll combine the language. So instead of having duplications, they'll just take one out or they combine the language, and that's pretty much what's happened here. So it's not taking away anything, it's just the decision of the recommendation that it's pretty much embodied in one policy opposed to two.
Right, I think as a parent and a school board member, I'd like to see it stay there, but that's just me. That's why I brought it up, so we can discuss it.
I do. Can I just, again, I think one thing that I think Ms. Phelps is kind of right on about, and I don't, is there anywhere else where that right, because she is correct, it has been deleted, where else in a corresponding policy can she be assured that there is still that right to inspect? And so if we can't answer that tonight,
Yeah, I'd have to research where that is.
I think that, I mean, I know that we feel confident that it does exist, but I think if her trepidation is by removing it, that right goes away. Oh, you got it? Okay. I'm not finding it, so. Okay, so I think we may have that answer.
Apparently, it's in Section A of JOB.
Okay, because I couldn't
According
see
to
it,
Ms.
I couldn't
Daniels
see
right
it from
next to
where
it.
I was. So point that out, Ms. Daniels.
So if you go, sorry, if you go to the top, you see where it's redlined, that paragraph, go to the first paragraph on that page.
Mhm.
And there's a statement there that says that parents have the right to review.
Right, it
And
says
that-
are available.
In that
And-
first paragraph of that section.
Right.
At the top.
Okay.
So what they did was they deleted it at the bottom and just put it in at the
Okay,
top.
perfect. Thank you for discussing that.
Again, I thank you all for catching that, because the shall be to are is not very easy to detect. So
Right.
I think it was a good catch, Ms. Phelps, but I do think that verifies that
Make
that
sure
right
the
continues
question's
to
been answered,
exist.
right.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Phelps, you still have the floor.
I have the, we were talking about the tobacco, what is that, JFCH? What did I do with my page?
Drugs in school, JFCHs.
Okay, for the, I don't know, I printed it here. So where else can we find this? We were talking about the tobacco policy. Is this a school board policy? It's new language from VSBA. And as far as the accountability and what actions, sanctions, would that fall into our student code of conduct book?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Because I noticed it was all crossed out, and I was trying to
That language is in JFC.
double check with the index to the policy itself. And I also have another question on, okay, so that was the regulation, the sanction disciplinary actions, okay. So what are they? Are the sanctions and disciplinary actions for people who are smoking cigarettes and tobacco and vape? And I'm saying on school property, right? Is there anywhere that shows, an offense? What happens if there was somebody there on school property smoking and vaping? I mean, it's just a regulation we have with no consequences?
So JFC does outline offenses, and it also outlines the tiers in which the offenses would receive discipline. So it does depend on the number of incidences, what in fact the student is smoking in this case, whether it actually does outline the actual punishment, if you will, or the retribution that would in some cases occur depending on the situation. But JFC does outline first offense, second offense, third offense,
Does this apply to adults?
The adults, we have I'm sure, I don't want to speak for Mr. Lynn, but. Mhm. yes, that is the same policy for personnel side. But if it's an adult that's at a sporting event, or sometimes it's a lack of understanding that we don't have smoking on school grounds, so sometimes it's just as easy for an administrator to walk over and to say, please refrain from smoking on school grounds, because a lot of times our guests on school property don't necessarily realize that.
Okay. And on BBFA, down where it says the special anti-nepotism rules relating to school board members and superintendents, I know that this provision was changed to prohibition, and then there was also additional language added in here. Number 3, notwithstanding the rules stated above, the school board may employ or pay any family member of the superintendent, provided that the superintendent certifies that he had no involvement in the hiring decision, and the assistant superintendent certifies to the members of the school board in writing the recommendations based upon merit and fitness and competitive rating of the qualifications of the individual, and that the superintendent had no involvement with the hiring decision. Adding this came from VSBA, or how does that?
I can speak to it.
How does that change?
It came from a new law, a new legislation.
Okay.
And so VSBA
Thank you.
updated it.
Thank you for explaining that.
If it will help the board, if you'd like to amend it and take it out,
I'll just go on to BBFA so we can get through this real quick. So the BBFA-K, the training requirements for elected school board members. I would just, what is the training, who's responsible? It doesn't say the FOIA council, and I know that it is a General Assembly that went through, that we need the FOIA council training. Is that what that means?
Ms. Phelps, I will be candid with you that BBFA-K that you're referring to was on my list, not one that I reviewed, so I would defer that to an individual who did review that for you.
If I can clarify a little bit, part of what Ms. Phelps is citing is legislative action that requires school board members to receive updated training. When I went to the last legislative session, I was trained. At the upcoming meeting in November in Williamsburg, there will be a session. As a matter of fact, I'll be moderating that session. Anybody who attends that session receives a card at the end of the session. They fill it out, we'll turn it into the clerk, and therefore you record that you have received the training. It's a one-hour session training.
I get that, but on here it says, each elected school board member completes the training session provided by the council. It doesn't say FOIA council, school board administration, so it was just clarity on here that I'm asking about.
Ms. Phelps, I want to usually Dr. Baker, on her question about training, when we have new school board members, don't we usually convene training on that at that particular time as well for new members?
We do. I think that what she's referencing, though, is new. It has become under another new law that's requiring it. So I think there is an understanding that school boards across the state are going to now be pushed to have this specific training. And as Dr. Meyer said, it is being provided and supported through VSBA. But I think I'm interpreting the within 2 months of assuming office to again be for new school board members, but I certainly think there is an opportunity for everyone on this board to get whatever they need within the next month.
Understood.
I think the clarity behind it, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
was just where it said provided by the council. The FOIA council, usually it's the FOIA, so that's where I was looking at it just says the council, what council, right? That's all I'm doing, that's it, okay. And I probably have a couple more.
Go ahead.
Do you mind? Okay. Also, as far as the charter schools, the LC, can you explain the additional students eligible to enroll in the school division pursuant to Virginia Code 22.1-3? B, because they are children of military personnel, active military duty, who will reside in division, may participate in the lottery process for charter schools in the division at the same time and in the same manner as students who reside in the division. Does Spotsy have charter schools?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so that doesn't apply, right?
At
Okay.
this time.
Thank you. It was in my packet to approve, and that's why I asked about it. And the last one, I think here, has to do with the deferment for the further view for the, used to be called the free and reduced price. Now it's for food services, the EFB.
Again, Ms. Phelps,
policy.
that's not one that I reviewed. However, I know that Mr. Upperco is here. He may be able to answer your question related to that one. That wasn't one that was in.
Yeah, if we vote on this tonight, it just seems like, it looks to me that it's to defer it to another date. So I just had, if I could be notified when we will be discussing this policy, because there's a lot of red changes to it. So that's why I just wanted to see if you can give us an update on the.
Mr.
Ms.
Upperco,
Phelps, you'll get a notification as far as when it will be reviewed. It's just been put off to another date because they need more time to research it.
I need a lot of time to research sometimes, too. That's why I was just asking. While I had it here, I have my whole list. Thank you.
Mr.
That's all.
Upperco, did you want, can you answer the question that Ms. Phelps has in regards to EFB, right? EFB and food services.
As Mr. Upperco is moseying up to the podium, if I might, Mr. Braswell, noting that this is a significant policy addition, I'm also, he can share what he is able, but I know that through the Food Service Task Force, and I want to be reminded of our board members that are participants on that, Ms. Shelley and Ms. Phelps. It could be that at the next meeting, that might be something good for them to also talk about, especially since Ms. Phelps has the question. He can do what he's able to this evening, but maybe in preparation for their meeting, that could be another opportunity to really get into more depth. So,
we deferred two of those regulations because right now the federal government is in somewhat of flux as they're looking to see, they're looking at some changes in their policy. So we deferred that pending a discussion at the Food Service Task Force. We did not feel like we were ready to, I didn't want to unilaterally, along with Linda McGee, make a decision without going through that process. So that's why the two regulations that were deferred. There's still some active discussion at the higher levels of government as to what exactly the policies should look like.
I appreciate it. It was just a free and reduced price, and the food services for me was just concerning because I noticed there's a lot of red additions and strike-throughs, so that's what brought my attention to it, just to bring it up and discuss it. That's it.
Yeah. I feel like it needs to go through a process, and we have a process in place. So we did not feel like we wanted to be presumptive and go ahead and, shut our eyes and throw a dart.
I appreciate it.
Sure.
Any other questions?
No, I'm good. Okay. Sorry.
Ms. Shelley.
Thank you. So policy EB is the School Crisis Emergency Management and Medical Emergency Response Plan. It lists a number of individuals or types of positions that would be part of the crisis planning. I'm just wondering if that is an all-exhaustive list or if we could add other people to that. For instance, if we were able to get a specialty security person who is not on this list, but it's a community member that we know and trust with their background that would be able to be part of this this crisis team.
Ms. Shelley,
This is all exhaustive.
Ms. Shelley, I want to ask you if you could push your mic back. It's making an echo when you speak.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm
go ahead.
I'm going to go ahead and try to answer, and I'll judge my accuracy by nods or shakes of the head. I think these are going to be the requirements for the team, but I don't see why there would be any problem with adding additional expertise to these. I don't think it limits that in my interpretation of it, at least at a cursory glance.
That's correct. This provides the minimum.
That's all I needed. Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? Go ahead, Ms. Graham.
I just wanted to clarify, just because some of that got a little confusing, that Dr. Martin can confirm, this is a second reading, first of all, so this is the second time we've read all of this. But these are VSBA suggestions, so we didn't write these policy changes. So as far as, and like Mr. Upperco said, the admin decided, and it was on that chart that Dr. Martin held up a second ago where it showed the changes, that those two policies about food service were deferred from this. So I just wanted to make sure that it's what was stricken and stuff wasn't from Mrs. Flanard or Mr. Upperco or whatever. This was the VSBA suggestions, and they go through to redo our policy kind of for us, resulting from legislative changes that come out of the session. So to stay in conformity with the law or to make things read better, because they go through them so often, as Dr. Martin pointed out in that first policy, that there was a question of just having it written down twice. It was just repetitive. So if you would just look to the beginning of it, you notice that it was said the same thing that it said at the bottom. So when they're VSBA labeled updates, those weren't written by the board or staff. That was a state organization that tries to make changes that conform to the law that changes every year. So I just wanted to point that out, that it wasn't from the people here. They just suggested the ones that were in flux, such as the federal policy, that we deferred that vote until the federal policy was debated.
Thank you. Point well taken. Ms. Phelps, go ahead.
So let me clear the air right now. When I'm representing Spotsylvania County parents and taxpayers, teachers, students, the whole community, and if I need clarity on a policy that I'm elected to share and to have knowledge of, I'm going to ask, whether it's VSBA or another organization, because sometimes VSBA might not be what's best for Spotsylvania County. And if it is, great. If it's not, it's okay too. So I ask the questions, not because nobody's doing their job or not any of the administrative staff isn't up on it, but for clarity for myself, to make sure that we're all on the same page and have the understanding, and for the public. That's it. There's no, just because it says it, just vote on it and not ask questions. And that's not me, and I'm not going to. So I just want to put that out there. That's all I'm doing, is just for clarity, to give me guidance on it. That's it.
Ms. Phelps, I concur with your comments, and if there's no other comments, let's call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries 6-0 with one absent. Moving on now to 15.03, adoption of the draft fiscal year 2020 through 2025 strategic plan. Let me get there. Oops, wait, get back in here.
Mr. Chairman, can I move to adopt the 2020 to 2025 strategic plan?
Thank you. Let me read the background information first. In accordance with Virginia Standards of Quality, Standard 6, Planning and Public Involvement, Section 2.2-1-253-13.6, the Code of Virginia, local school boards are required to, develop and adopt a division-wide comprehensive plan. For the past several months, Spotsylvania County Public Schools Strategic Planning Steering Committee, which is comprised of 71 community constituents and school personnel, has been developing, has been working diligently to update the division's current fiscal year 2014 through 2019 strategic plan. The draft plan was presented to the school board at a special meeting on August 26, 2019. Following this meeting, the plan was posted on board docs and the Spotsylvania County Public School website for public's viewing on August 27, 2019. In accordance with Virginia Code Section 22.1-253-13-6 and School Board Policy AF, a public hearing was conducted on September 9, 2019 to solicit feedback, comments from the public regarding the draft plan. The administration has reviewed and considered all comments that were submitted at this public hearing and has submitted the final draft of the strategic plan for the board's approval. It's the administration's recommendation that the school board adopt the draft fiscal year 2020 through 2025 six-year strategic plan as presented. We have a motion by Ms. Gramp. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Seconded by Dr. Meyer. Any comments or questions? Comments or questions? We'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries 6-0 with one absent. We'll now move on to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business? Seeing none, is there any new business?
Mr. Chair. As I put at the beginning during board member comment time, I'd like to request that the board concur with the staff to prepare a report which looks at the fee structures for parking by students of other divisions to see if there's any out there that are not charging anything, and at the same time take a look at how much is involved in the revenue for offsetting costs and come back with a report to the board so the board, as a board, can make a decision whether this item is included as part of a budget request.
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment on his before we?
Yeah, go ahead.
Dr. Meyer, I had a question about this in August, and so I just can provide this to all of you, but I just want to let the public know that, because I did my own research, and so I can either provide this to this. I know Mr. Wolf knew that I had worked on this, so the fees, I called Prince William County Schools, Culpeper County Schools, Fauquier County Schools, City of Fredericksburg, King George, Louisa, Orange, Spotsy, and Caroline. So the fee structures were $100 to park at Prince William, Culpeper, Fauquier, City of Fredericksburg, King George, Orange, Spotsy, and Louisa are all $75 to $80. Lowest is Caroline, and they are at $40. Their senior dues are a little higher than ours, which is the other thing that Mr. Wolf and I discussed. You also need to start comparing the dues, which gets a little more variance, but they're all still pretty much the same. All the funds from all the county schools go into the Student Activity Fund, which is all monitored and audited, and those are spent at the principal's discretion. So that is uniform across all of the areas, and so it goes right back to support the children. I also randomly have my parking pass from '98 because it was in my scrapbook from when I had my head injury. And it was $75. So I paid $75 for parking at Cortland High School in 1998. So we've gone up $5 since then. So I thought that was an interesting point in my research. And then the $80 today in 2019 is 44 cents a day. Just if someone needs the math, which I thought was pretty good. We do provide free public buses for those who can't afford the 44 cents per day. And I just wrote during my research, I thought there was a public land point to this. How are we charging to park on public property? Well, we pay parking fees at public parks. It's public property. We pay parking fees at public buildings and historical sites, and we pay parking fees at parking lots that are publicly owned. So, and all those fees cover the maintenance of those things. So we are, in comparison to those schools, I have not found any school that doesn't charge for parking on this side of the fall, of the fall line. I did not call east, but I'm not sure. But I did call pretty much in our region.
Ms. Graham, thank you for your comments. Any other comments? I think the information that you provided is very salient information. And it may be even for the fact that you've already given staff some pieces of information that they may not have considered. I think it would be very beneficial to the public if they could actually see it. And I think we should ask staff to continue that study so that they can, we can see it, and then we can determine if there's anything else we need to do from there. Ms. Phelps, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I think my suggestion to really actually see the numbers is to, we have 5 high schools, to ask for the principals, their budget, their budget book for the parking, where the fees are for the parking. I know that I received some comments about the Massaponax parking lot, and I don't know where this discussion with the parking fees is going, but I do know that I have gone up there and there are clear weeds growing through the cracks in the parking lot. So maybe that would be a suggestion too, to really show me, this is a school board member, where the high schools are, like the other school board member just mentioned that the principals can spend it wherever they see fit in their schools. So if we can actually, or if I can actually see the revenue that's being brought in and where it's being allocated to, would probably help me see things a little more clear to get on board. I do know that, I think it's King William, it was a school board member that I met, I think it was King William County or King William school board member, and they don't charge any fees, but she did say that they have a structure for parking, and it's for the students, the seniors who work get first choice, and then it goes to the juniors who work, and there are no sophomores that drive, so that's how their lottery, they don't charge, but that's how they do it, and how they offer the students parking, but I also know parking is commodity, and I do know some students who, they do come from, I'm just going to say it, a divorced family and a single parent, and they're trying to make ends meet, and 44 cents a day is a lot to them, or $80 to park. So they do park in Home Depot. I know I brought it up at the first school board meeting, and while it's not probably the safest thing to do, however, they wait tables, and they're just trying to make it through and help their families out. So I think it's good to have a further discussion about this, to see the pros, cons, the exact where the funds are really being dispersed to, and how we can help the community and the parents and the students from a burden, and that's all I have. Thanks.
Dr. Meyer.
I would just like to add kind of another facet to this. As we are considering expanding, our pathways for career and tech and development, and our students are going to be more and more involved with apprenticeship and externships and things, that we need to make sure that we're not creating any obstacles for those students when they're if they're going to be in need of having a vehicle on campus in order to be able to be accessible to those endeavors, that we keep that into consideration. Likewise, with situation if students are economically handicapped, disadvantaged, that we address those situations. I think the principals do, but I think, that's something we need to keep in mind. So those two facets I bring up as we take a look at this item in the future, and this will be presented to the school board. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Graham, sorry.
Not saying in any way that what has been mentioned, to find out how much fees are collected and what they're used for. I just want to clarify, Sean, you can just shake your head. Parking lot maintenance is in our CIP. Thank you.
Thank you. We have direction to staff to present that information. What would be an appropriate time, Dr. Baker?
We can do it at the November budget work session. And we will present that. And in particular, I think, and I appreciate all the discourse between the board tonight, but one of the things that happens is the more things get said, the more they become reality. And I do want to explore with our high schools. I know that we have really been focused for quite a while on making sure that students, if there are any disadvantages that they're facing, that they are not being prevented from equitable opportunities because of that status. But when I hear it shared, it makes me even more committed to it. When we do present this, I want us to be a lot more concrete so that that doesn't continue to be shared inaccurately. So we'll present it then.
Thank you, Dr. Baker. So we'll expect that report around the November time period. Any other new business? Seeing none, we will adjourn by unanimous consent. Unanimous consent, thank you.
Make a motion.
Unanimous consent. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.